The very beginning. It's the day of October 10th, the day of one Naruto Uzumaki's birth, and there couldn't be a worse situation to be brought into. His mother, Kushina Uzumaki, was very weakly holding her newborn, knowing that she wouldn't live long enough to watch him grow up and become an amazing man and a great shinobi. His father, Minato Namikaze, has the same thoughts running through his head while he battles the Kyuubi. Minato, the fourth Hokage, understands he can't kill the fox and only knows of one way to beat it, and that's to seal it inside a newborn child. He also can't bring himself to ask another parent to hand their child over as a sacrifice to save the village, so he's left with only one choice as to what to do: seal the Kyuubi inside his son. With great resolve, he hurries to where his dying wife and newborn son are and breaks the news to his wife. Kushina starts to cry because she understands the situation but knows her son is gonna live a life of pain and isolation just like she did before she met Minato, but there's nothing she can do. She's too weak. With a sad sigh, he picks up his son, grabs his wife's hand, and hurries all three of them to a clearing. He leans Kushina against a tree and places Naruto in a crib he had already set up, knowing this was the only way. Minato quickly flashes back to where the Kyuubi is before forcing the fox closer to the clearing so he can perform the sealing. When the fox is close enough, Minato starts flying through hand signs. Snake, boar, ram, rabbit, dog, rat, bird, horse, snake. Then claps his hands together before yelling the name of the jutsu, Reaper Death Seal. Kushina's eyes go wide recognizing the hand seal sequence and screams, "Minato knew." But it was already too late. "I'm sorry, Kushina, but there's no other choice," Minato says. "It has to be this way or the fox will destroy the village. I'm putting my full trust in our son and know he will surpass us." He smiles sadly and begins directing the Shinigami to seal the fox in Naruto. He locks the fox behind a very complex seal, the 8 trigram seal, allowing the fox's chakra to slowly leak out and mix with Naruto's own. When the Kyuubi is sealed, the Shinigami's hand retracts, taking Minato's soul with it. "I love you both with everything I have," he mutters out before collapsing where he stands and passing away. Kushina is heartbroken, both from losing her husband and knowing she won't survive long enough to guide her son through having to deal with this burden that's been forced on him. As her eyes start to drift shut, she says, "I'm sorry and I love you, Naruto." When her eyes close, she hears footsteps coming up behind her quickly, but it's already too late and she passes away in that clearing with Minato. Hiruzen comes sprinting into the clearing in a panic, having seen the Kyuubi vanish. He knows better than to think that the fox can be killed and is already preparing to find the worst outcome possible. What he runs up on isn't exactly what he was expecting, though. He sees a crib in the middle of the clearing with Minato lying in a heap next to it and Kushina slumped against a tree. He looks in the crib and sees a sleeping newborn baby. Hiruzen's heart breaks knowing what this child has been doomed to endure. He also knows that the only child Minato would use would be his own. He picks up the baby and a single tear falls from his eye. An Umbu squad soon appears in the clearing and Hiruzen orders them to take care of the bodies before walking away toward the village carrying Naruto. When Hiruzen gets into the Hokage's office, he spots a single scroll on the desk with his name printed on the outside of it. He sets Naruto down in a crib Minato had no doubt set up so he could spend time with his son while he worked. He takes a seat in the chair behind the desk and unrolls the scroll to find out what his former successor has left for him. "Hiruzen, if you are reading this, I am so sorry. It means I have sealed the fox away using the Reaper Death Seal, sacrificing my own life in the process, that or I have failed to protect the village. Either way, it means I have likely passed on. If I successfully sealed the Kyuubi, I would have used my own son for this task, as I can't bring myself to ask anyone else to sacrifice their own child if I wasn't willing to do the same myself. My son's name is Naruto Uzumaki. I want him to be treated like the hero he is for holding the fox back and protecting the village every day from harm. I understand that this isn't going to be possible at first, so I don't want his Jinchuriki status to be announced publicly. As much as I want him to be treated like a hero, I also want him to live a normal childhood while he still can. I understand what I'm asking you to do is going to be difficult to pull off, but it has to be done if he is to grow up without any issues. I also want you to keep his parentage a secret until he is strong enough to defend himself from any enemies. As you know, I have many enemies, including most of IWA, who would be willing to stop at nothing to destroy my legacy. If it gets out that he is me or Kushina's child before he is able to protect himself, I pray you will do what's necessary to keep him safe. Sealed behind my portrait are a few scrolls I'm leaving for him. It contains his inheritance, all of me and Kushina's remaining funds, the deed to our house, the contract signing over all of my investments, and my notes on the 2 jutsus that made me the man I am. I want him to have everything before his 18th birthday, but I'll let you decide when before then he is ready. I am putting a lot of trust in you, Hiruzen, and I'm trusting you to take care of my boy, regardless of which outcome has left me unable to do so myself. Do not let the council get a hold of him or allow the council to take any power from you. Remember this, you have the final say over any decision unless the daimyo gets involved, as I am passing the title of Hokage back down to you. I have no doubt Danzo will try to do something behind your back to take over the village. I had ordered him to disband his little root organization, but I highly doubt that he actually did it. You know how that old warmonger is and how he works better than I do, so I trust you to handle it. Make sure he learns his place before things get too out of hand. Yours truly, the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Hiruzen lets out an exasperated sigh and looks over to the crib in, the once again his office that Naruto had been placed in to continue sleeping. Damn it, Minato, you left me with a mess. A village to rule over once again in my old age, and a newborn child that'll have to be watched over closely due to the burden you've placed on him. He says quietly with another sigh. I'm getting too old for this shit, I swear to Kami, with that final thought voiced. He gets to work filling out and filing reports from the attack. A couple of days later, in the council chambers, Hiruzen Sarutobi is seen sitting at the head of a large table with a young child resting in his lap. To his immediate left are his advisors Hamura Mitokado, Koharu Udatane, and Danzo Shimura, his former teammates. Sitting along the right side of the table are the clan heads for all the major clans in Konoha. First up is the Uchiha clan head, Fugaku Uchiha, a very stoic and serious man, followed by the Hyuga clan head, Hayashi Hyuga, an equally stoic and serious man, the Aburame clan head, Shibi Aburame, a man who shows little outward emotion, the Inuzuka clan head, Sum Inuzuka, a wild-looking woman, the Akimichi clan head, Choza Akimichi, a larger-set fellow who likes to eat, the Yamanaka clan head, Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the torture and interrogation department, and finally the Nara clan head, Shikaku Nara, a very lazy man who thinks everything is troublesome and Jonin commander of the village. The last 3 are better well known for their immense teamwork as the Inoshikacho trio. The right side of the table is filled with the civilian council consisting of wealthy families and merchants who hold some monetary power in the village. Currently, the council chambers are in an uproar, mostly on the civilian side, over the recent attack by the Kyuubi. So Hiruzen, why have you called this council meeting, and what's with the child you have with you? Koharu's voice cuts through the chaos, causing many to quiet down as they are also curious as to why the former Hokage has a newborn with him. Well, Koharu, to answer the first question, Fori called this meeting to inform everyone that I am retaking the seat of Hokage now that my successor, Minato, has passed on while defeating the Kyuubi and saving the village, Hiruzen says. Murmurs spread throughout the chambers at the news of the 3rd taking up the mantle once again. And the child? Danzo asks, already having an idea of why such a young child would be present. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, and he's the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. As soon as the words passed his lips, the council chambers erupted in shouts calling for the boy's immediate death from the civilian side, while the clan heads all looked sorrowful for the burden the boy will have to carry. Quiet, Hiruzen's voice booms out over the yelling. No such thing will happen, and even if it were to, you civilians have no say in the matter, he says, releasing a small amount of Ki to get his point across, shutting the civilians up. You should hand the boy over to me for training. I'll make him into the perfect weapon. Loyal to the village, Danzo states with an evil gleam in his one visible eye. Denied, Danzo, you will not come near the boy. But Hiras. I said denied, he states louder and with more force, unleashing his Ki once again, accidentally waking Naruto, who begins to cry. This meeting is adjourned, he states, picking up Naruto to comfort him while watching everyone leave. He doesn't miss Danzo's sneer at being denied his perfect weapon. 1 week after the council meeting, Hiruzen was sitting behind his desk, with his hands folded in front of his face, glaring at the advisors and the civilian council representative. He was struggling greatly to contain his Ki from unleashing and killing all three of them. He just couldn't understand how these people were so stupid as to leak information from a council meeting to the public, especially something like the identity of the QB container. If that information had made it outside of the walls of the village, it could have created an international incident, and Kami knows the village couldn't handle anything else happening at this moment. So who wants to explain how and why information from a council meeting was leaked to the village? Hiruzen asked surprisingly calmly for the severity of the moment. The civilian representative began to stutter, but before she could get anything out, Danzo spoke up. What are you speaking about, Hiruzen? What information was leaked? Hiruzen's glare becomes icy for a brief moment before returning to just being harsh. Well, you see, Danzo. Someone, he locks eyes with Danzo's lone visible eye as he continues, has leaked the identity of the QB container to the rest of the village. You wouldn't happen to know the only reason the council was told, would you? Because we have a right to know. He is our weapon after all. Danzo responds immediately as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. That's where you're wrong, you fool. His tone has taken an icy edge as he talks. The one and only reason the council was informed is because if something were to happen, I shouldn't be the sole person to know something like that. In fact, the civilians shouldn't have even been present for that meeting in the first place, but you had to insist that they be there for talks, full well knowing only shinobi matters were going to be discussed. He couldn't keep his Ki under control as he said that, and it started leaking out slowly, causing the civilian representative to shake where he stands. Danzo narrows his lone visible eye at the words Hiruzen has spoken. What is it exactly you are suggesting right now, Hiruzen? I'm suggesting nothing, Danzo. I'm merely stating the facts. You insisted that the civilians be present for a shinobi meeting. Also, you will address me as Hokage-sama or Dano. This is not a friendly meeting between former teammates. This is a serious matter with very serious consequences. Do you understand me? He states more than asks, his voice rising slightly. Hi, Hokage-sama, Danzo responds, containing any reaction he might have had. Good. Now, this is what's going to happen regardless of what any of you think. His status is going to be classified as an SS rank secret that only I or the boy can speak of. If anyone else does, they will be sent directly to Ibiki and Anko at TNI. Depending on the severity, they will either be imprisoned or executed without trial. Do you all understand me? Hiruzen asks with an air of authority and finality, lacing his words, putting emphasis on the word all while looking between his three advisors and the civilian representative, reining in his Ki once again. Hi, they all respond, the civilian rushing out the door while the advisors slowly take their leave. I swear, they are either going to cause me to drop dead from stress or I'm going to murder them all, Hiruzen mutters under his breath, once he's alone again as he starts on his seemingly endless paperwork. Just under 4 years later, Naruto is seen sitting atop the Hokage monument alone with a frown on his young face. You see, today is October 10th, his 4th birthday, but it's also the day the QB was defeated by the 4th Hokage. Naruto, even as young as he is, was a very observant child. He knew for some reason he wasn't liked very much by the village, and it always seemed to become more blatant as his birthday came around. What exactly that reason was, though, he wasn't entirely sure, but he could take a few guesses and none of them helped to improve his mood. One guess was because he looked so much like a younger version of their beloved hero. Another was it had something to do with the QB considering his birthday and the Fox's defeat lined up on the same day. He had a few other theories, but those seemed like the most likely to him. He tried to get answers once, but the Hokage wouldn't tell him, and he had no one else to go to ask, as most people just ignored him. Shaking his head to rid himself of those thoughts, Naruto looks up at the sky. It was about 4 p.m. and he knew he should head back to the orphanage before the festival came close to starting. Although Naruto knew he should go, he was always most at peace with himself sitting up here alone. Being away from the village main and the people who would either glare from the corner of their eye or vacate any area he was in, always gave him some sort of hope that one day he could keep this peaceful feeling around more permanently. Watching the clouds pass above him, he sighs and eventually stands up to head back to the orphanage. Unknown to him, there were two others watching him from two separate trees. One was a dark-haired man dressed in all black in a crow mask. This was the Umbu that was assigned to keep an eye out for any trouble involving Naruto and to keep him safe just in case. The other was a man with brown hair, also dressed in all black, wearing a blank mask with NE on the forehead. The second unknown watcher was a part of Root, assigned by Danzo to hopefully find a moment to take the boy for his own gain. Now both his Umbu watcher and the Hokage were well aware of what Danzo was trying to pull, and it was just more reason to have Naruto watched at all times. Naruto was dashing as quickly as he could to avoid everyone in the village streets. Unfortunately, he wasn't paying attention to where he was going and ran straight into a drunk villager who was making his way out of a bar. Sorry, Naruto stammers out while picking himself up. Just watch where. The villager began to slur out before getting a good look at the boy who ran into him, and his face took on a menacing sneer. Well, if it isn't the demon brat, he hiccups. Looks like Kami has answered my prayers to get my revenge, he says as he gets up and grabs the boy by the collar before dragging him towards an alleyway, gaining a small group of other drunken villagers who also began to follow. I said I was sorry, Naruto yells out in surprise and slight fear while the word demon runs through his mind again and again. Fortunately, before anything could happen, the Hokage and a group of Umbu appeared surrounding the group of drunken villages. The Hokage looked pissed off and not in the mood to be dealing with something like this. He took one look at what was happening, already knowing what they had planned, having watched the entire situation unfold on his crystal ball. Execute them, the Hokage says in a deathly calm tone. Before any of the villagers could react, the Umbu followed the orders of their Hokage without question. Unfortunately, Naruto had also just witnessed the slaughter of those drunken villagers, causing him to freeze where he was. The Hokage ordered the Umbu to deal with the bodies as he walked over to the now completely frozen boy, picking him up and shining away to his office. Once in his office, he set Naruto on the couch before taking his seat behind the desk and taking a good look at the young child. Giving a tired sigh, he realizes what exactly the boy must be going through, having just witnessed his first of probably many deaths. Naruto, my boy, I know this must be hard for you to process, but this is the life of shinobi. Shinobi have to kill, lie, steal, and deceive to accomplish the missions that are given to them. We do these things to protect those around us and our villages. To protect, we must cause pain to others. To protect, we have to make difficult decisions that may end in the loss of others' lives. Through the Hokage's speech, Naruto began to cry silently as the weight of the world hit him all at once. The truth as to what a shinobi is wasn't a good one, but the truth in this world is hardly ever a good one. This world is shrouded in darkness and shadows that cause pain and suffering, but at the same time, those shadows and darkness bring happiness to those who are lucky enough to live in the light. But we must do what we do so the innocent don't have to. If you wish to follow in the footsteps of many great shinobi, those are the things you will have to deal with. I don't want you to decide on your future now. You're still young and have time to make that decision. For tonight, I'll have someone take you back to the orphanage to hopefully avoid another incident. Take my words to heart, Naruto. The way of the ninja isn't all glory, Hiruzen says before snapping his fingers once. A crow-masked ANBU appears to take Naruto home. With Naruto after the ANBU dropped him off in his room. Ninjas live in the dark so others can live in the light is the only other thought that ran through Naruto's mind besides the one word that had been echoing around in his head since the incident started, demon. What the Sandaime Hokage said made some sense to him. To protect you sometimes had to do dirty and dark jobs so others wouldn't have to see that side of the world, and he understood that being a ninja wasn't just some game like other kids wish to believe. But it was that one word that really stuck with him tonight. He was called a demon, and now he was sure that the QB had something to do with why he was seemingly hated by everyone. All he had to do was figure it out, right? Well, that's a lot harder than it may seem when no one will answer your questions and you can't get into the shinobi side of the library until you start the ninja academy at least. And even then, the chances that he'll find something in the small section Academy students can access is slim to none, considering if this was a secret, they wouldn't let kids have any information regarding it, even if it's not direct information. With those thoughts plaguing his mind, he lay in his bed, facing the wall, and silently cried himself to sleep as he was still a 4-year-old child who just witnessed his first death, something that would forever haunt him. Back in the Hokage's office moments later, the crow-masked ANBU reappears in a kneeling position in front of his leader's desk. "Crow, how long have you watched over Naruto now?" the Sandaime asks tiredly. "Ever since he was one Hokage-sama, right after we got word that the orphanage was doing the absolute minimum they had to take care of him." Crow replies with slight anger in his voice at remembering some of Naruto's treatment, or lack thereof. "And how many times have you had to step in and stop something from occurring?" the Sandaime asks, taking note of the slight bit of anger that his ANBU is showing on behalf of the young boy. Crow stays silent for a moment before responding, "Sir, I've had to interfere on 15 separate occasions, all but 2 being assassination attempts in the first year and a half I was assigned to him." "I see. And what of those other 2 times you've had to step in?" "Tonight and one other similar situation where the person responsible ran off upon spotting me, and I prioritized watching Naruto over chasing them down." "Good. You made the right choice then," Hiruzen says with a slight smile. "And what do you think of the boy, your personal opinion, not your professional one?" "I think he has had a hard life already because of the circumstances surrounding him, but I don't think he's a bad kid or the fox itself like some would like to believe." Crow answers almost instantly, "I wish people would treat him like any other kid. But that small leak spread to enough people who are blinded by what happened that night that I'm not sure that will ever be truly possible no matter how much we wish it could." Hiruzen doesn't let his smile visibly grow, but internally he's grinning like a madman knowing that Naruto's main guard has such an opinion of him. "Do you know if he wants to be a ninja or not?" "I know due to the circumstances surrounding him, he may not have much of a choice overall, but he does have 2 more years before he joins the academy." "As far as I'm aware, sir, he hasn't indicated either way, but he is observant and might understand if you lay it out for him clearly early on instead of putting it off till it's too late. I think him being called a demon got to him tonight, and if it were me, I'd rather be told by someone I trust instead of figuring out this situation on my own." Crow explains after having seen how Naruto watches his surroundings and the people around him when he does leave the general safety of his room. "I see." Hiruzen frowns slightly. "I really don't want to put this burden on him so soon, but I understand where you're coming from and I agree. I would rather it be explained by someone I trust instead of only discovering a part of the truth and having to come to conclusions myself." He sighs. "This situation is going to be hard to deal with no matter what we do, honestly." They both sit in awkward silence for a few moments in thought about how to deal with this rather unpleasant situation, both thinking over how they would hope it would be handled if either of them were in Naruto's position and considering how to minimize the damage if it's not handled properly. "May I make a suggestion, sir?" Crow asks, and the Hokage waves for him to continue. "If we want this handled a certain way without anyone interfering, you need to do so somewhat soon. It'll only take one drunk individual to spill enough information for him to piece things together enough to come to the wrong conclusion. I suggest we give him a few days to process what happened tonight and let him think on what you said, then bring him in and tell him the truth." Hiruzen's eyes go wide and he goes to say something, but Crow raises his hand and cuts him off. "Obviously not everything. His parentage is still a bit too sensitive to have a chance at that leaking out, but I mean the truth about the Kyuubi and how the fourth entrusted the safety of the village from it to him and how he wanted Naruto to be seen as a hero." Hiruzen frowns and thinks for a few more moments before responding. "I can see your point and the benefit of doing it that way, especially if him being called a demon tonight did really affect him. That alone might have been enough for him to start digging for information. He won't find anything with what can be accessed until he is a genin, but it wouldn't take much if he is as observant as you say to get information without the library. That's exactly why I suggested you tell him sooner rather than holding off. I've already basically heard people say it without flat out saying it. Because of that leak almost immediately after the council was told, it's known to a lot of the population, and I have no doubt he's heard what some people have said and might even have a theory on why he's treated how he is. Crow states, considering he knows very well from being Naruto's personal guard that people can't keep their mouths shut about his situation even if they are partially blind to the actual truth. Hiruzen sighs again, and it's obvious to anyone paying attention that his age is starting to catch up to him. Then I guess that's what I'll do. Let him process tonight, and then I'll have to tell him. Once he learns the truth, though, he'll need to be properly trained to eventually deal with any outside threats when this or other secrets surrounding him do leak outside the village. I realize everything won't stay secret forever. Crow, no Shisui Uchiha. I would like you to be here for when he's told, and I would like you to train him. You've shown to me you don't hold the same misguided grudge against him that others do, and I trust you can successfully keep him safe while bringing his skills up enough so he can do so himself without worry. The now-named Shisui remains quiet for a few moments, whether from the shock of being told to train Naruto or in thought. Hiruzen can't tell with the mask on. I accept Hokage-sama. He pauses for a moment. Will I be revealing my identity to him when he's told about the Kyuubi? Indeed you will be. I think it would be good for the boy to know of at least one other face that doesn't hold a bias towards him, Hiruzen replies calmly. With that, Shisui nods and shunshins away back to Naruto's room to continue watching over him for the night. With one last sigh and a shake of his head, knowing that things may become a bit harder for him depending on how Naruto reacts, he gets started on the pile of paperwork that's crowding his desk space. He pauses briefly and before anything can happen and says, "Yes, dog, I'm sure about doing this. As much as I would rather he didn't know for a little while longer, Crow was right. If we want this handled correctly, we have to handle it sooner rather than later or before he learns of it on his own." With that final bit said, he doubles down on his effort to finish his work before it gets too late, and he ends up spending another night in the office. 4 days later. Back at the top of the Hokage monument, we find Naruto sitting quietly in thought on the fourth's head. He's grown to be really quiet since he witnessed his first death and had that talk with the Sandaime a few days ago. In a tree not far behind him, Shisui Uchiha is sitting, worried for the boy and wondering if it's time to take him to the Hokage to learn about the Kyuubi and be offered training by him. Surprisingly, one of Danzo's root agents isn't present to also keep watch over Naruto for once. He's very aware that 4 days likely wasn't really enough time for him to get over everything, but some things need to happen to ensure the safety of both Naruto and the village. While all that is going through Shisui's mind, Naruto is thinking about what that drunken man called him. A demon. Of course, he doesn't think he is literally a demon, but it doesn't change the fact that it hurt him to be called a demon to his face. It also doesn't help that it seems to not just be that villager's opinion of him. While he's never been so close to actually being hurt by someone, as far as he knows, he has had to get used to the quiet name-calling and the harsh glares he constantly receives when he does go out in public instead of sitting up here or staying in his room at the orphanage. He may not be able to piece the whole puzzle together now due to lack of information, but being called a demon of all things is just another piece of what he was already trying to solve about himself. Shisui takes a silent, deep breath, straightens his mask, and shunshins next to Naruto. "Naruto-san, would you please come with me to the Hokage's office?" he asks in an almost emotionless voice. Naruto jumps slightly at the ANBU just appearing beside him, but he gives him a nod in response. "Yeah, let's go see Gigi," he says with a slightly shaky voice, from both not completely trusting the crow-masked ANBU and from having just been jump-scarred by that same ANBU. Shisui smiles behind his mask, knowing that some of the kid's innocence is still intact. He places a hand on Naruto's shoulder and does a slower shunshin than the one he normally uses to take them both to the Hokage's office. Upon arriving in the office, Shisui takes a knee in front of the Sandaime's desk and says, "Sir, I have brought Naruto as requested." Hiruzen looks up from his work and smiles at them both. "Ah, thank you, Crow. You may stand, but please remain," Hiruzen says calmly, hiding his nerves well. He shifts his gaze to look more directly at Naruto, who squirms a little at being stared at. "Naruto, I've asked Crow here to bring you to my office so I could tell you a few things that were honestly meant to stay a secret from the village for a while and from you for a few more years at least, but unfortunately, I don't believe that will stay possible for much longer. The reason for that is that quite a few villagers already know, and I know you are a smart kid and would eventually either figure it out yourself or someone would tell you in an attempt to harm you in some way." Naruto tilts his head in confusion in a cute way before asking, Okay, Jig, what is it you need to tell me? Everyone in the room has to resist reacting to the cute and childish display of the boy. Hiruzen makes a hand signal for his personal Umbu to leave even though he knows Dog will likely stay around to watch Naruto's reaction, having been his guard since the moment of his birth. Naruto, my boy, what I'm about to tell you is a very serious thing, and I want you to listen till the end before saying anything. Can you do that for me? Naruto nods his head once and makes a serious face. Again, those present have to refrain from reacting to the cuteness. Do you know anything about the Kyuubi no Kitsune besides that it attacked 4 years ago, and that the 4th Hokage defeated it? Naruto shakes his head in the negative. Well, 4 years ago, on October 10th, the Kyuubi attacked the village. The 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, was the one who did indeed defeat the beast. However, a Biju, beings such as the Kyuubi, can't be killed and are incredibly powerful. The only way to accomplish what he did was to seal it away into someone or something. With how powerful the Kyuubi is, the only option was to seal it into a newborn child. Upon hearing that, Naruto's face drains of color and the serious expression falls to an almost blank one with a little sadness showing through. Naruto, the 4th entrusted its power and the safety of the village to you. He wanted you to be seen as a hero for holding the beast back, but that obviously didn't happen, and he was aware that it likely wouldn't, so he wanted it to be kept a secret from the general populace, but the information leaked out anyway. I wasn't going to tell you until you graduated from the Ninja Academy, but Crow brought it to my attention that you were likely to figure out part of the truth before then, and it's better to be told by a trustworthy source rather than having to come to conclusions yourself. I'm sorry, my boy. This is a large burden that's been with you since you were born, and it'll be with you forever. I understand if you are mad or want to freak out, but please understand this was the only choice the 4th had at the time. Naruto stays silent and looks down at his feet. A few tears fall to the floor and he quietly asks, "Is this why everyone seems to hate me, Gigi?" Hiruzen almost doesn't hear the boy. The question was asked so quietly, and he pauses before answering, which Naruto picks up on. Indeed it is, my boy. People fear the overwhelming power of the fox, and they fear what they don't understand. The sealing arts are too complicated for most to know, and they don't understand the difference between being the prison for the fox versus being the fox. Just remember, Naruto, you are not the Kyuubi, you are its jailer. Naruto gives a slight nod at that. I can understand that, Gigi. I sorta already figured out the Kyuubi had something to do with me, but I just didn't know what. He looks up at the Hokage, with tears still in his eyes, and asks, "Since you're telling me this, could you also tell me about my parents?" Again Hiruzen pauses before answering. A slightly nervous look crosses his face, but is covered up before it can be noticed by the child. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't do that. They were powerful ninjas who made lots of enemies, and if that information were to get out somehow, it would be very bad for you and the village. People from all over the elemental nations would come and try to kill you because of who your parents are. I promise I'll tell you when I feel you are able to properly defend against their enemies." Naruto again gives a slight nod at that. "I understand, Gigi, and I'll hold you to that." He looks back at the Chromast and Byu, and then back at the Hokage. "Why did you ask him to stay, Gigi?" Hiruzen smiles a bit and motions for Crow to step forward. "This Nbu here has been one of your personal guards since you were 1 year old. He's the second longest standing guard you've had." He motions to Crow. "You may remove your mask now, Crow, and introduce yourself." Crow steps forward and turns toward Naruto before removing his mask. "Hello, Naruto. My name is Shisui Uchiha. The reason I've been asked to stay is that I and the Hokage came to an agreement that, if you accept, I am to train you in the ninja arts." Naruto looks to the Hokage questionably, who gives him a nod before speaking. "I accept, Shisui-san. If I'm ever to be strong enough to protect myself well enough to learn who my parents are, I'll need to be trained." The Hokage looks on with a smile at the interaction. "Just call me Sensei or Shisui-sensei or just Shisui. None of that san or sama crap, kid. Makes me feel so much older than I am," Shisui states with a chuckle and a smile of his own. Flashback. Naruto looks to the Hokage questionably, who gives him a nod before speaking. "I accept, Shisui-san. If I'm ever to be strong enough to protect myself well enough to learn who my parents are, I'll need to be trained. The Hokage looks on with a smile. Just call me Sensei or Shisui Sensei or just Shisui. None of that San or Sama crap, kid. Makes me feel so much older than I am, Shisui states with a chuckle. Hiruzen also chuckles a bit at that comment, remembering how he was the same way when he was young and not used to the respect the position of Hokage brought to him. Now Shisui, Hiruzen says, to which Shisui automatically snaps to attention. Officially, you will remain Naruto's personal guard full-time. I'd rather not have to deal with any backlash from the council. They cause me enough headaches trying to gain power and take over all village functions as it is. He rubs his temples, thinking about the last thing they tried to slip past him. Now that does mean officially I can't compensate you for the additional workload. However, unofficially I can allow you slightly more freedom than your guard position or a sensei position would. Considering Dog doesn't want to retire until Naruto is in the academy, I'll have him take over full-time for the next week with a trusted member of the team he leads when not on guard duty. This will give you some time to make plans for how you wish to train Naruto. In 1 week exactly, you'll go back into his guard rotation during days only while Dog takes nights when he's in the village, so you can train him during the day. Do you have any questions or concerns with that? Shisui shakes his head in the negative while Naruto thinks for a moment about everything before doing the same. Hiruzen nods and gives a silent signal. Shisui returns his mask back to his face as the Hokage's personal guards return to the office. Okay, Crow, once your current shift ends, you'll be free until then. You may take Naruto and leave now. Shisui nods and places a hand on Naruto's shoulder before shining away with him. As Hiruzen gets back to work, he thinks to himself, I doubt I'll come to regret allowing this in secrecy. It's for my and Naruto's benefit. I'm finally able to truly help the kid out. I just hope when I pass on, Minato understands why I told him of the Kyuubi so early. Over the next week, Naruto spent most of his time running around the village and staying out of sight of the general populace by taking mostly alleys. He did test the waters by entering a few shops to see if any would treat him normally, only to be told to leave from those few. Now, knowing the truth, it doesn't bother him nearly as much, but it still does hurt a bit. Having been told that he has ANBU guards, he's made a small game of trying to see if he could spot Dog or his partner, only to come up empty-handed every time. Naruto really didn't expect any other outcome, but he figured he might as well give it a shot anyway. Shisui spent the week coming up with a basic outline for training. The only thing he really has to go off of is that Naruto has high stamina and decent stealth without being taught a thing. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, he has to start with the bare basics anyway. Flashback end. The day the training is meant to start, Naruto is once again found on top of the Hokage monument. He wasn't given a location to meet at, so he figured a nice place away from everyone was a good place to sit and wait. This also gives him some time to think about what he may be learning and get himself excited while trying to calm his nerves. A few minutes after arriving, Shisui appears in his full ANBU getup. Naruto begins when he sees him but is cut off with a raised hand. When the mask is on, I am Crow. An Umbu's identity isn't known to the public. We are meant to be the elite, protecting from the shadows to not be seen or known. Shisui says in a monotone voice from behind the mask. Now, if you're ready to go, I have been given access to a private area for us to use. Naruto nods in understanding and steps toward Shisui, ready to go. Shisui, unable to stay completely emotionless and boring, tosses Naruto on his shoulder. With a yelp from Naruto, they vanish in the quickest shunshin he can manage with another person. It's not his quickest, but it's fast enough for it to seem like he just vanished without a trace. After appearing just outside of a secluded and empty training ground, Shisui sets Naruto down, who instantly doubles over, holding his stomach and gags from the sudden rush and stop. Shisui can't contain his laugh and waits for Naruto to pull himself together before saying anything. Naruto stays in that position, gagging for a solid 5 minutes before regaining himself enough to just sit there breathing deeply. After another 2 minutes, Shisui finally speaks up. Welcome to Training Ground 37. This is where the Hokage would come to train if he decides to instead of his private training grounds at his home. We were given access to this one because there are chakra suppression and security seals surrounding it. Before we can enter, I'll need to add you to the security seals. He goes to make a few hand seals, then stops and asks, "Do you know how to use chakra yet, kiddo?" "No, I don't. I was never shown how to unlock it as that is part of the academy and I doubt anyone would have just told me." Naruto replies. Shisui deadpans behind the mask and sighs. "I should have seen that coming honestly because yes, you learned that in the academy. Alright, copy me." Shisui sits down and takes a deep breath. Naruto copies the position and also takes a deep breath. Now close your eyes and focus inward. Look for a warm and calming feeling around your belly. When you find it, latch onto that feeling and pull. This may not work on the first try. In fact, it's pretty rare that someone can unlock their chakra on the first try. Just keep going until I tell you to stop. Naruto closes his eyes and takes another deep breath before focusing inward. He stays like that for a solid 30 minutes. Remember, most don't get it on the first attempt, so don't feel down about it. Just keep going. Shisui says in a calm tone. Naruto continues focusing inward for another 15 minutes before he finally feels something. It's warm and calm just like he was told, so he focuses on that feeling and tries his best to pull it out. After another 5 minutes, he feels this warm sensation grow and grow before it floods throughout his body. A blue aura quickly surrounds him and produces small cracks on the ground. Alright, you can stop now," Naruto Shisui calls out as he activates his Sharingan on instinct, instantly breaking Naruto's focus and causing him to stop pulling. The aura recedes back into him. He opens his eyes and sways a bit where he's sitting. "Good job, kid. And if I may say so myself, your chakra is damn impressive. I've met only a handful of adults who could do what you did and stay awake after doing so, and never once have I seen a kid do it." "Unlock my chakra? Couldn't everyone do that?" Naruto asks in a lazy and sorta tired voice. "No, not that. Everyone who wants to be a ninja has to do at least that. Look around you at what your chakra did." Shisui answers with a small amount of excitement leaking into his voice. Naruto does as told and his eyes go wide at the cracks around him, but he can't keep them wide for long. Shisui deactivates his eyes and smirks. "Oh, training you is going to be fun if you're already surprising me." He quickly does a few hand signs. "Alright, channel a small amount of chakra. I'll let you rest a bit after this is done." Naruto does as told and tries to channel as little chakra as he can, which is still a considerable amount. Shisui just shakes his head and does a few more seals. "Alright, you've been added to the security seals and can enter this training ground without causing the ANBU to be alerted." He picks up Naruto and walks into the training ground before placing him beneath a tree at the edge to rest a bit. In the Hokage's office during the time Naruto is unlocking his chakra, Hiruzen is watching Naruto and Shisui with his crystal ball, knowing Naruto is going to have to unlock his chakra to be allowed into the training ground. When he does, his eyes go wide and his jaw drops before he has a chance to stop his reaction. "Holy shit," he mutters under his breath. Regaining his composure quickly, he keeps his thoughts from being spoken so as to not have any questions later on down the road. "I am glad I sent them to that training ground specifically. If I had suggested a closer one that didn't have so many seals, that would have been felt all over the village and caused slight panic. Or worse, Danzo would have sent his men to investigate." He leans back in his chair with a smirk. "Your child is gonna be a monster, Minato." Dog appears in a swirl of leaves in the middle of the office and kneels. "Sir, I was doing a perimeter sweep and felt a strong chakra signature that I partially recognized by your training field. It disappeared before I could investigate, so I came straight to you." "Sir, was that dash?" Hiruzen cuts him off before he continues with a raised hand. "Indeed that was. He just unlocked his chakra. Do you know if anyone else was in the area that I'm going to have to worry about?" "No, sir. I was the only other person besides his normal occupant during this time." "Good. Fewer questions and less paperwork." Hiruzen smiles. "You may return to your duty, dog. You already know to keep this quiet." Hi with that dog vanishes in another swirl of leaves. Back with Naruto and Shisui about 30 minutes later. Naruto is sitting up fully now and watching Shisui twirl a kunai on his finger while he explains what they are going to be doing. Alright, now that you aren't on the verge of passing out, I can explain the basic outline of your training schedule. Now, you probably won't like this, but for at least the first year you won't be training with chakra at all. No control exercises, no jutsu, no nothing. This was the original plan anyway, but the amount of chakra shows that you definitely have an imbalance of spiritual and physical. No one your age should have that much chakra, let alone with absolutely no training, so I highly doubt you have a lot of physical energy built up. We will be starting with pure conditioning, and it will be pretty light, at least by a genin standards, to hopefully balance you out some. This has two major benefits. Firstly, it will make it so you can properly fight, meaning your hits hurt and you are quick enough to make hits and avoid being hit yourself. Secondly, balancing your spiritual and physical energies will make chakra control and other exercises involving chakra, like learning a jutsu, easier to accomplish as you won't have to fight yourself to use the correct mixture of them. Before I continue, do you understand so far? And if it's the bit about physical and spiritual energy that has you confused, that will be fully explained once we start using chakra. Naruto went to say something before Shisui added the last part. I understand so far, sensei. Shisui smiles at being called sensei for the first real time. Good. To begin, I want to test your absolute current limits. I know you have a ton of stamina, so task number 1 is to just simply run laps until you start to feel tired. Once you're done with that, I'll let you rest again before we move on. Go! Naruto scrambles to his feet and starts running around the training ground. Shisui hops up into a tree and sits on a branch to observe. After a solid 45 minutes of running from Naruto, he starts to slow down and he's breathing noticeably heavier. That's when Shisui calls out for him to stop and join him by the tree he's sitting in. I knew you had high stamina, but that was still pretty impressive. A 45-minute high-paced run is coming up on basic out-of-village mission-level stamina as is. You can rest for 20 minutes, then we'll begin on push-ups. This will be until you can't complete another. Shisui calls down to Naruto. Naruto drops next to the tree and leans against it while trying to catch his breath. Shisui drops a bottle of water next to him, and don't forget to stay hydrated while working out. Wouldn't want you to pass out from dehydration of all things if you even can, and I don't particularly want to test that. Naruto grabs the bottle and drinks half of it before stopping to breathe again and properly catch his breath. After 20 minutes, Naruto's breathing has normalized again and he begins his push-ups. He may have high stamina, but that's basically all he currently has. He lasts for about 15 push-ups before his arms give out and he lays there. Alright, once you can move your arms properly again, move on to sit-ups, then I'll be done figuring out where we are starting. Shisui calls out from his spot in the tree. Naruto just groans from the pain in his arms in response but complies nonetheless. He only gets through about 13 full sit-ups until he ends up not making it back up to a sitting position fully. Shisui hops out of the tree and pulls out a notepad and pencil. Alright, while you relax for now, I'm gonna write up a basic schedule for our sessions. Enjoy this time while you have it. Tomorrow you're not gonna like me as much, but this is the cost of getting stronger, kid. Months 1 to 6 of training. The first 6 months or so saw Naruto going through the same exercises every day to condition his body to handle taijutsu training and sparring without straining himself too badly. His daily routine would consist of waking up at around 7 or 8 in the morning at the orphanage, eating the small breakfast he was provided, and then meeting Shisui on the Hokage monument. From there, Shisui would take him to Training Ground 37. He would be instructed to channel a small amount of chakra to get past the security seal, and then they would begin. Naruto's training in these early months consisted of a 30-minute jog around the field, 10 push-ups, and 10 sit-ups, increasing as needed. This was designed to push Naruto near his limit and have him get used to being pushed to that point. He would rotate push-ups and sit-ups until it was about noon. Shisui would provide him with a light, but nutritious, bento box for lunch and water throughout the training. From about 1 to 5 instead of more physical training, Shisui decided to have Naruto read up on history and basic battle strategy. He reads up on mostly Konoha history and clan history with a focus on the clans of Konoha. Shisui puts focus on the village over the world to start with because, as he put it, if you do not know your home, you might not have a chance to see the rest. Naruto would prefer to think it's more of a how can you trust people you know nothing about, especially when you haven't exactly been treated well yourself situation. He never complained though. Some of the stuff he's had to read was actually really interesting. After that time, Naruto was allowed to do as he wished. For the first month, he spent this time figuring out which shops would allow him to shop. It turns out there are a few who either don't hold prejudice or figure if he's willing to pay. That's more money for them, so they put any reservations aside to earn more. Either way, he at least knows where he can go for food and other smaller items. Unfortunately, with him not being in the academy yet, he couldn't test any of the shinobi-specific shops. They would have kicked him out regardless of how they felt about him because a random kid can't just enter those. Months 6 to 12 of training. The next 6 months went relatively the same. By the start of the 6th month, he was doing a 45-minute jog, 20 sit-ups, and 20 push-ups. Shisui has also started joining him in his workouts. He figured instead of sitting there, he could get some work in himself. Around month 8, Shisui started to teach Naruto the basics of weapon throwing with dulled kunai and shuriken. The throwing practice took the spot of the last hour of his morning exercises before lunch. The afternoons still focus on the history of the village and the clans that reside here. On his birthday, Naruto went through the same morning training as usual, but Shisui said he had something special planned for the afternoon. After lunch, Shisui brought out a wrapped box and handed it to Naruto. "What's this?" Naruto asks. "It's a gift. It is your birthday after all, or did you forget?" Shisui teases. "I didn't forget, it's just I've never received a gift for my birthday before," he responds with a slightly sad tone. "Well, open it, kiddo. This isn't all I have planned, but we have some time to kill till then." Shisui says a little sad that he's never received a birthday present before. Naruto does as he's told and rips the paper off before opening it. In the box is another smaller box that he removes and opens. Inside that box is a tanto as well as a kunai and shuriken set. "Now, Naruto, I'm giving you this tanto so you have options when in a fight later on in life. I'll teach you how to use it after you learn to fight with and without a kunai. For now, I just wanted you to have everything you'll eventually need. You are not to use any of it until I say you're ready. Is that understood?" Shisui explains. "I understand, Shisui. Thank you," Naruto says, tearing up a bit before rushing at Shisui and hugging him. Shisui pats him on the head and smiles. "You're welcome, Naruto." When Naruto lets go, he continues speaking. "Now I'll hold on to them so you don't have to deal with someone at the orphanage taking them. You have a few hours free before I'll come to get you when it's time for the next part of my plans." With that said, he collects the box of blades and shunsins away. Naruto decided to stay at the training area and read for a few hours. After a few hours of reading for Naruto, Shisui reappears in the field. "All right, it's time for the final bit." He calls over to Naruto, who puts his book away, gets up, and walks to him. "All right, where are we going?" Naruto asks curiously. "To get you a birthday dinner. I know a place that is guaranteed to let you eat there," he says. "What's this place?" Naruto asks again, his curiosity growing. A surprised Shisui smirks and picks Naruto up, placing him on his back, before vanishing again. When they appear, the first thing Naruto notices is the smell, and it's amazing. Looking around, he sees they are outside of a small stand with a sign that reads, "Ichiraku Ramen." Shisui leads him inside where he sees the Hokage sitting and waiting for them. "Happy birthday, Naruto," Hiruzen says when he notices them enter and pats the seat next to him for Naruto to take. Naruto hops up on the stool and hugs Hiruzen. "Thanks, Gigi." "You're welcome, my boy," Hiruzen says with a smile before handing him a small, paper-wrapped package. Naruto looks at it for a moment before tearing the paper away, revealing a book that looks a bit worn. The book is titled Sealing for Beginners Volume 1. Shisui mentioned he was getting you a tanto to give you more options when he was giving me a report. I figured I could do the same and impart to you some knowledge that may help you at some point. That's the first book of many to teach fuinjutsu or sealing techniques. That one specifically is the copy the fourth used when he started learning and has some great notes in it. I don't expect you to finish it for a while, but when you do, I'll give you the next book. Hiruzen says with a smile. Naruto starts to tear up again, but quickly wipes his eyes and hugs Hiruzen again before giving a quiet, "Thank you." "Now how about we eat?" Hiruzen asks while patting Naruto's back as Shisui takes a seat on the other side of Naruto. He nods and all three of them look over the menu, ordering a large miso ramen for all three of them. By the time they were ready to leave, Hiruzen had 1 bowl, Shisui had 2, and Naruto had 5 bowls of ramen. Hiruzen paid for the meals and had to leave to get back to the office and finish his work for the night. As Naruto and Shisui were leaving, Shisui says, "I hope you had a good 5th birthday, kid." "I did. Thank you for all of this, Shisui. It's been my best birthday by a long shot," replies Naruto before they go their separate ways for the night. At the end of the first year of training, the Hokage shows up to see the progress that has been made. Shisui has Naruto do as he did the first day they started training to show all of them his new physical limits. He does an 1.5 hour run at a high pace, 26 push-ups, and 27 sit-ups. Naruto also gets to show what he can do with kunai and shuriken throwing, hitting all the targets but with only 1 bullseye. Hiruzen smiles and claps for Naruto when he's done. "You're coming along nicely, my boy. I'm proud of you for putting in the work to get to this point. Most kids would rather be out playing instead of training. Have you been reading the intro to sealing book I gave you?" Hiruzen says in a warm, grandfatherly tone. Naruto gives a small smile before responding, "Thanks, Gigi. I might have been the same if the kids didn't avoid me like the adults do. So this has been a good use of my time instead of sitting around. I have read some of it, but I haven't given it a look yet. Been more focused on my normal training instead of that, but I plan to." "I see. Well, the kids of your generation will one day make their own choices instead of following their parents' opinions about you. Just gotta show them that their parents are wrong," Hiruzen says in the same tone but with a slight frown that goes unnoticed by Naruto. The same slight frown is mirrored on Shisui's face. "Don't rush yourself to learn it. It's a very delicate art that takes a lot of time to really master." "I know, Gigi, but I've never really cared what everyone thought. I'm used to it even if it does hurt a bit, and I'll make sure to take my time when I start getting into seals," Naruto says with a slight down tone before returning back to his normal happy self. "I know, my boy, I know. I got to get back to work now. I'll visit you soon to see how you are doing." Hiruzen gives a wave before disappearing. Naruto mumbles, "I want to learn how to do that," which causes Shisui to chuckle and the childish antic. "I might teach it to you one day, kiddo, once we get past the basics of chakra," Shisui says with a small smile. Naruto's eyes light up as he spins to face Shisui. "Really? You kid, but only if I feel you're ready for something like that while I'm training you," Shisui says with a light chuckle. Months 12 to 18 of training. Upon being taken to the training ground the day after his evaluation, Shisui has Naruto sit down. Before saying anything, he pulls out a notepad and hands it to Naruto. "This is gonna be our new schedule for the coming year. As you can see, I'll be teaching you the basic academy fighting style and chakra control. I'll also incorporate fighting with a weapon once I see you have a good grasp of the basics. Mornings will start with a run, a set of push-ups, and a set of sit-ups. Every other day you'll do either katas and light sparring with me or chakra control. Before you ask, I won't teach you a single jutsu until I deem your control is up to my standard. Afternoons will also rotate history and weapon usage. We will be starting on more of the elemental nation's history over just the village," Shisui says while looking at Naruto, who was reading along on the notepad. "Now I know this seems like a lot, but I promise you, you can do it. Because of how the adults treat you, I want you to be more than prepared just in case anything happens. Also, I'm not sure if the basic chakra control exercise that is taught will be possible for you due to your large amount of chakra, but we will figure that out when we do our first day of control training. Today, I want to go straight into showing you the katas for the academy style and see if it's a style that fits you so I can find a better one if I need to." Tomorrow we will go right into chakra control so I can figure out exactly what you need to start on control. You'll also have Sundays to relax and do as you want because this year of training will be more intense than the first years. Now before anything I want you to do some stretches so you can still be somewhat warmed up and loose before we begin. I don't want you getting hurt. Naruto stands up, hands the notepad back, and starts doing some basic stretches. While stretching he asks, "What kind of style is the academy style?" Great question. It's a pretty simple all-around fighting style. It's not built for strength or speed but to be a good base for when you become a genin and have access to all the styles we have available. It's basically made so everyone can figure out what their body is better built for. However, I have noticed it suits people naturally built for raw power better than speed. I have a feeling it's not going to be a great fit for you, but it still should be a good base. Shisui answers with a smile. So I'm more built for speed than raw power? Naruto asks. Yes, you are, unfortunately, because of how often you spent running and hiding when you weren't in the orphanage. Your body is more conditioned for a faster style. While you could put in a lot of work to change that, a power-based style will never quite be perfect for you. This isn't to say you won't have power, just that you're more suited for speed. Shisui answers honestly. That makes sense. Naruto nods and accepts that while he finishes stretching. Once he's done, Shisui guides him through the basic academy-style katas, correcting his form when needed. While it's too soon to tell completely, Shisui can already see small parts of the style that are going to be a slight hindrance to Naruto when it's being put into use in spars and battles. They spend about half the morning working on katas. About halfway through the morning, Shisui has Naruto stop. Now, I don't expect you to have learned the style enough to apply it, but I do wish to have a spar and see how your instincts kick in during battle and see how you apply all the conditioning we have done so far, he says, getting a nod from Naruto. Naruto walks a few feet away before getting into the ready stance of the style as best as he can. All right, Naruto, come at me when you're ready. Shisui slips into the basic Uchiha stance while saying that. Naruto takes a deep breath before rushing directly at Shisui. He very sloppily throws a punch that Shisui sidesteps while tapping Naruto on the arm and side. Naruto slides to a stop and lunges at Shisui, aiming low, just to be sidestepped and tapped on the back of the head and side again. Naruto rolls to a stop and spins around quickly to face Shisui. He runs at him again, throwing another wild punch that gets batted away and using the momentum to spin and try to elbow Shisui. Shisui knocks the elbow down and pushes Naruto back, sending him sliding on his feet, before falling back and tumbling a bit. Alright, not terrible, kid. Definitely built for speed, but I can see some power. The academy style will do for now, and maybe I'll find you something else later on. Shisui states, for now we'll take a break for lunch, then we'll go into history after. Naruto nods and repositions to sitting comfortably. He may have high stamina, but sparring, even as short as it was, still took it out of him a bit. Shisui brings him water and a bento before sitting next to him with his own bento lunch. They spend about an hour talking about what Naruto could have done and how to improve while they eat before Shisui decides it's time for today's history lesson. After lunch, Shisui gives Naruto a book titled An Overview of the Nations to read. After a few hours of reading and asking Shisui questions, Shisui drops Naruto back off at the orphanage, where he spends his night reading some more of the intro to sealing book he was given for his 5th birthday. The next day, just as Shisui said, Naruto was put right into the first chakra control exercise that was taught in the academy, the leaf-sticking exercise. While meant to be a simple first step to learning to control your chakra, those with larger reserves tend to struggle to limit their chakra enough to perform it effectively but can with enough effort. Shisui let Naruto spend 2 hours attempting to pull it off, while watching with his Sharingan to no avail. After those 2 hours, Shisui stops Naruto and has him try something else. Alright, it's clear with no control you won't be able to pull off this exercise ever. You simply have too much chakra to limit its flow to what's needed. I'm gonna teach you the next step up from that, the tree walking exercise. The concept is the same, except instead of focusing on one point on your head to hold a leaf in place, you'll have to focus chakra to your feet to stick on a vertical surface. In theory, it doesn't sound much harder, but the feet are the hardest point to focus a concentrated amount of chakra to. I'll show you first, then I'll watch and help out where I can, Shisui says before casually walking up a tree. Naruto's eyes go wide in amazement at seeing someone just walk vertically up a surface. This exercise also takes a good amount of core strength to not just fall flat on your back once you are off the ground. Shisui tosses a kunai in front of Naruto. Use that to mark your progress starting when you make it 5 feet off the ground. Also, you may want to take a running start and use the momentum to help you out. Okay, sensei, Naruto says, picking up the kunai. He channels chakra to his feet and takes a running start at the tree. As soon as his foot touches it, he's pushed back with the bark breaking off. Gonna take less chakra than that, kiddo, Shisui says from a branch on the same tree. That's how the morning continued. Naruto running at the tree and him either being pushed back or slipping. He did make some progress and actually made it to the 5-foot mark. He wasn't able to maintain the correct amount of chakra though, and no matter what he did today, he would always end up falling. Once lunch came around, Naruto was actually feeling kind of tired. After lunch, they went into more weapon throwing practice until it was time to go. Naruto again spent his night going through the intro to Sealing Book. These 6 months progressed smoothly under this schedule. After the second day, he went back to getting a warm-up workout in before practicing either the Academy fighting style and sparring with Shisui or chakra control. With the Academy fighting style, while not completely proficient, Naruto has started to adapt to it well in the spars. Obviously, he hasn't come close to actually hitting Shisui, but he is progressing well enough. With the tree walking exercise, it's become obvious that control is going to be his weak point for a long while. He has managed to make it just over 10 feet up the tree in these 6 months, but it was a struggle the whole way up. Naruto's other skills are also progressing nicely. He's up to comfortably doing 30 sit-ups and push-ups and an hour jog. He is also up to consistently hitting 4 out of 10 bullseyes with both kunai and shuriken. In his free time after training, Naruto has read through the Into to Sealing Book twice trying to memorize it. He finds the topic to be surprisingly easy to understand for some reason. He still won't ask for the next book until he can practice his calligraphy so that he can practice the basic seals before moving on. Months 18 to 24 of training. Over the next 6 months, Naruto made great progress in the areas he was focusing on. His chakra control has gotten to a point where he can make it 25 feet up the tree. Shisui decided that that was good enough for Naruto to start learning his first jutsu. Flashback to month 20 of training. I'm impressed with how far you've come in chakra control, Naruto, so I've decided to teach you one of the 3 basic jutsu that are required to pass the academy, Shisui says one morning before training. Now I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure you'll ever be able to use this jutsu without some extreme control training because it requires so little chakra and using too much causes it to just fail. The jutsu is the basic clone or illusionary clone technique. Watch the signs carefully as I show them to you. Shisui performs the hand seals very slowly. Tiger Borax Dog. 3 clones of Shisui appear in a cloud of smoke next to him. These clones are just illusions, meaning that they are only good for a subtle distraction, but any skilled ninja can figure out which ones are clones and which is the real person. It's easy to spot if you watch for which one is interacting with the environment. These clones won't kick up dust and move grass while moving. Now you give it a try and we'll figure out if you'll ever be able to use it pretty quickly. Use as little chakra as possible. Shisui activates his Sharingan to watch how much chakra Naruto uses. Naruto nods and goes through the hand signs a couple of times before giving it a real try. This time, when he does the hand signs, he channels the bare minimum chakra he can manage. In a puff of smoke appears a very sickly-looking and pale clone lying on the ground that stays for a few seconds before dispelling itself. Shisui can't help but snort at the attempt. Naruto frowns and looks at Shisui. I'm guessing I can't use this clone then? Was that as little chakra as you can manage? Naruto nods. Then yeah, it's unlikely you'll ever use this clone. You used about 6 times as much chakra as was needed. I still want you to try and manage it for a handful more attempts before we figure out a solution. Naruto's eyes go wide at hearing how much more chakra he used than was needed. It was that bad? Shisui nods this time. Okay, I'll try a couple more times. And try he does. Every time the outcome is the exact same, a clone that looks like it's on the verge of death. Okay, so now what are we gonna do about me being unable to use this clone? What we're gonna do is go ask the Hokage for another clone. You don't need that specific clone, just a clone to graduate. The other two techniques don't have a substitute but also will be possible for you to perform. Want a piggyback to the office or just a hand on the shoulder? Shisui asks, walking toward Naruto. Piggyback. It's still easier to handle like that, Naruto says, and Shisui just smiles, picking Naruto up and placing him on his back before disappearing in a shunshin. They appear in the Hokage's office and see Hiruzen surrounded by piles of paperwork and folders. He's so deep into his work that it takes 10 minutes before he notices someone else is in the office with him. When he does finally notice he's not alone, he looks up and smiles at seeing Shisui and Naruto. Ah, Shisui, Naruto, to what do I owe the pleasure of this visit? Not that I mind the distraction, the aged Hokage asks. Well, Hokage-sama, I've decided Naruto's chakra control was sufficient to learn his first jutsu from the Academy 3. I wanted to see if he could learn to use the basic clone first because it requires such a low amount of chakra. I wasn't sure if he would be able to limit his enough to actually perform it. It turns out it just won't be possible for him, even being proficient in the tree climbing exercise. Shisui says, I was hoping you could provide him with an adequate replacement clone to use. I see. Hiruzen says, Naruto, my boy, can I see you attempt the basic clone? Naruto nods and climbs off of Shisui's back, of course, Gigi. He says right before slowly going through the seals again and channeling as little chakra as he can. Again, all it produces is a sickly-looking and extremely pale clone that only lasts a few seconds before dispelling. Hiruzen scratches his chin and looks over at Shisui. Did you use your Sharingan to see how much chakra he was using? He asks. Yes, sir, I did. He used about 6 times as much as needed every time he performed the jutsu. Shisui answers quickly while straightening up out of habit. I see, that is overloading it by quite a bit. What chakra control exercise have you had him doing? Tree walking, sir, and he's gotten to a more than acceptable level for what should be one of the easiest jutsu. I see. Hiruzen then started rummaging through a drawer in his desk. I figured he would struggle with this one after he unlocked his chakra and already had something prepared just in case. He pulled out a scroll and tossed it to Shisui, who caught it easily. You will need to explain the benefits and drawbacks of that clone, though. It should be perfect as it was made with higher chakra reserves in mind. Shisui nods, already having an idea of which clone it is. I'll make sure he understands completely before we even start training on it. He still checks the scroll just to confirm. Hiruzen smiles and nods. Good. Was there anything else? No, sir, that was all for now, Shisui replies before picking up Naruto again. We'll be off and back to training. Shisui gives a salute and Naruto waves before shining away. When they arrive back at the training grounds, Shisui has Naruto sit down so he can explain. Listen carefully, Naruto. The clone jutsu you'll be learning instead is the Kage Bunshin, or shadow clone. Now this clone is special in many ways. It was created by the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, to be used for infiltration and information gathering. What makes that possible is that it's a completely solid clone that can function on its own for the most part. When it is dispelled, the memories the clone has gained are transferred back to the user. That's a benefit and a hindrance at the same time. You see, a normal Jonin can't make more than a couple of these clones as it splits the user's chakra evenly between the clones and the user. However, someone with a lot of chakra, like you or the first Hokage Hashirama Senju, can make far more of these clones. If too many dispel at the same time, it can overload the user's brain, resulting in permanent damage as a worst-case scenario. This is a Jonin-level technique for those reasons. Now I'll show it to you once and we'll spend the rest of the day practicing. Shisui makes a unique cross seal and 2 clones appear beside him in a poof of smoke. They both walk over to Naruto and ruffle his hair before dispelling before Naruto can swat their hands away. They spend the rest of the day training before Naruto can pull off the jutsu, managing to make a single shadow clone just before Shisui decides to call it a day. End of flashback. Naruto's use of the shadow clone since then has improved greatly to the point it takes less focus to summon a clone, and he has learned that he can summon 70 when pushing himself to his limit. He has also gotten to a point in his taijutsu that he won't have any issues using the basic academy style in a spar against most people he'll probably face at the academy, even though it doesn't suit him quite that well. He would still probably struggle to use it in a real fight, but he's also not expected to get into a real fight at 6 years old. While never actually hitting Shisui, he has steadily been dodging or blocking more of the taps Shisui uses instead of hits. He can't dodge or block them all, but he has managed to get to a point where he's blocking or dodging a solid 30% of them. Admittedly, Shisui is holding back quite a bit, and Naruto knows this, but it's a lot better than he could be doing if he never had the help. Naruto's weapon usage has continued to improve as the months go on. He's now consistently hitting 6 out of 10 bullseyes with both shuriken and kunai. Shisui had also started walking him through the basic katas in his chosen kenjutsu style over the last 6 months. He isn't progressing quickly in this area because the tanto is still a little big for him to use properly, so not much progress was expected until he grows a bit more anyway. For his 6th birthday, Shisui gave him a scroll containing the directions for basic blade care, and Hiruzen gave him a nice brush, some ink, and a scroll to practice calligraphy in. Shisui took him to Ichiraku Ramen for dinner again, which Naruto loved and was grateful for. He actually got to talk to the ramen stand owner, Tuchi Ichiraku, and learned that he's a good man who doesn't hold judgment towards him, at least outwardly. When the end of the year came around, Shisui had a talk with him at lunch one day. "You know, now that you're 6, you'll be starting the academy soon, right, Naruto?" Shisui asked. "I know, sensei. I also know that means less training time with you. I'm glad you understand that, kiddo," Shisui says while ruffling Naruto's hair. "I also wanted to ask you to do something while at the academy." "Ask anything, sensei," Naruto replies with a slight frown as he bats Shisui's hand away. Shisui chuckles, glad that the childness hasn't been lost yet. "I want you to hold back and not show everything. Deception is a key skill in a ninja's arsenal, and being high up in the class means nothing in the real world." Naruto nods and swallows a bite. "I understand. I didn't want to be top of the class anyway. I'm not sure I could be top of the class anyway." Shisui smiles. "You could be if you really wanted to be, but like I said, that title means nothing when you become a ninja, so don't push for the top, kiddo." Shisui ruffles Naruto's hair again, causing Naruto to try and bat his hand away, before laughing and enjoying the moment. The next few months before the academy. In the time remaining before the academy starts, Naruto's life seems to get a bit better. The villagers still don't treat him well, but he doesn't expect them to just get over their fears anytime soon. Not until he has a chance to prove to them that he isn't the Kyuubi itself. He has a handful of shops he can go to that won't just kick him out, and the Ikarakas have treated him like a normal person. He has visited Ichiraku Ramen quite a few times over the years since Shisui first brought him there on his 5th birthday. It's the only place he feels truly accepted within the village walls currently. His training with Shisui has continued as it has for the last year. A rotating schedule of sparring and chakra control. His sparring has slowly increased in both speed and danger, with the addition of kunai in the spars, and every so often his tanto just so he can get used to the weight in combat scenarios. With this, the risk of injury has drastically increased than if they stuck to standard full contact or blunted weapons. Luckily, there have been no major injuries yet, only some minor cuts and bruises on Naruto's end. For chakra control, he's still doing only tree walking, but Shisui has said that he has nearly mastered the exercise to his standard. Naruto also discovered that mastered in Shisui's mind meant going up and down for an hour and then learning to sit vertically on the tree for another 30 minutes. The afternoons are still where history, weapon throwing, and learning the katas for and practicing Shisui's chosen kenjutsu style are happening. Even though he hasn't said it to Naruto yet, Shisui is extremely proud of the boy's dedication and drive to learn all he can. It'll still be a few years before he is truly combat ready in any field, but great progress has been made. In the evenings, while alone in his room at the orphanage, he either reads the beginner's sealing book or practices calligraphy. Of course, like most things in this accursed world, not everything has been going great recently. For starters, the matron at the orphanage was suddenly replaced one day and none of the kids know why. Naruto actually kind of liked the lady who used to work there. While she didn't go out of her way to make him feel special like some of the other kids, she didn't treat him badly for his situation either. The new lady in charge, however, would go out of her way to make his life harder. Whether it would be not letting him play with the other kids, making him clean up after everyone else, or serving him smaller portions of whatever meal was made that night. The changing of the matron wasn't all that had happened, though. At one point, Shisui had to postpone his training for 1 week because he was assigned an important mission. Now, normally something like that wouldn't affect Naruto at all, besides the lack of training for however long the mission lasted. But Naruto decided on the second day to take a walk to the Hokage Tower to see his Gigi and continue his studies into seals. He wanted the Sandame's opinion on where he stood on calligraphy before even making his first seal anyway, so why not spend some time with the old man while he works? It was on his way to the tower that he noticed the villagers were a bit more vocal about their displeasure with him, and that he most likely would be entering the ninja academy soon. While he normally would have shrugged off the insults, one conversation, in particular, did catch his attention. "Hey, isn't that the demon brat over there?" one civilian said to another. "Yeah, I think it is. Have you heard it might be joining the academy this year around?" "I have, and I don't like that thing being around the other kids. Someone needs to take care of him before he can gain any knowledge or strength and decides to take its revenge on us. We should really finish what the fourth started." "Someone should, but that isn't going to happen with Hokage-sama wrapped around his finger and his ever-present guards hiding somewhere," the second civilian said before whispering something that Naruto missed. He, however, didn't miss the evil glint in the first civilian's eyes in response to what the other said. All Naruto allowed himself to do in the moment was inwardly sigh and think, "If they knew I could already fight like an experienced academy student." He shook his head quickly, getting rid of that thought, already guessing the reactions if anyone knew, and continued toward his destination with a small forced smile on his face. And while he'd never show it in front of the villagers, that conversation did anger him a bit, but there's nothing he can do about it without them using it as a sign that he's the QB. Meanwhile, deep in Naruto's mind, a single red-slitted eye opened and looked at its surroundings, inspecting its current prison. What it saw wasn't terrible when compared to its previous prisons. It may be trapped behind the seal like a caged animal, which admittedly is exactly what it is, but at least it's not pinned to a moon or sitting in water permanently. The eye closed again, and with a huff as it went back to sleep, seeing as the slight bit of anger in Naruto's system wasn't enough to use to manipulate its jailer. Back in the real world, Naruto had just stepped into the Hokage Tower and had to suppress a full-blown smile at the calm aura that seemed to reside in the building. On his way to the stairs, he happily returned the waves of a few ninjas who never had an issue with him during the few occasions he found himself here before his training started. Once up them, he walked to the end of the hallway, knocking on the only door this far down, and waited. Enter came the muffled voice of the Hokage before Naruto opened the door and entered. Upon entering, he saw the grandfatherly smile on the old man's face. "Ah, Naruto, my boy, what brings you to my office today?" Naruto's small smile turned genuine as soon as the door shut. "Well, with Sensei out on a mission, I figured I could hang out with you and maybe get your opinion on my calligraphy skills before even attempting a seal. I've practiced almost every night since you got me the calligraphy set," he said with some excitement in his voice and eyes. Hiruzen chuckles lightly and motions for Naruto to take a seat on the small couch in the office. "All right, my boy, you can hang out here. Just don't go using this as a way to get information from my meetings," Hiruzen says with another chuckle. "Get to work on your calligraphy, and I'll give you a review before you leave." Naruto nods and takes a seat on the couch, removing his calligraphy kit from his bag, and starts to draw out kanji in comfortable silence. So for the next 8 hours, that's how the time was mostly spent. Occasionally, Hiruzen would ask Naruto about his training or about a random scenario to see how Naruto's mind worked. One such scenario went as follows. "Say, Naruto, my boy, if you were faced with the choice of sacrificing your life to save the village, but leaving someone with a heavy burden in return, or watching everything burn, and you likely die in a fight that you know you can't win, what would you do?" Hiruzen asked. Naruto stops writing kanji and looks up at the Kage and thought, "Do you mean like the fourth when he sealed the Kyuubi into me?" he finally asked after a silent moment. Hiruzen smiles and gives a nod. Yes. Just like the situation that Minato-kun found himself in on that night. Well, Naruto starts before pausing. I wouldn't wish this burden on anyone, but I can't say I'd have done any differently from him. I think I also would have preferred to use my own kid over some orphan for the ceiling. The pain of being alone is enough without the hatred of the fox being thrown at you. At least with that option I could leave the kids something so they aren't just outcast. He finishes with a far-off look in his eyes as he thinks about what's happened already in his short life. Hiruzen had a proud smile on his face, but a hint of sadness was shown in his eyes. He was proud that the will of fire that the village was built on burned brightly in his surrogate grandson. He was sad that he had failed to fully protect Naruto from the hate in the world and the burden he was forced to carry until he was older. It also saddened him that he couldn't tell the boy about his parents just yet, but he knew it was for the safety of the boy and the village, or so Hiruzen keeps telling himself. Hiruzen didn't doubt that if told to keep the information to himself, Naruto wouldn't reveal it to anyone. No, he was more worried about a certain elder than whether or not he could trust a 6-year-old. He was certain that Danzo probably already knew of the boy's heritage and was just waiting for his chance to do something about it and finally get the weapon he desired. Noble way of trying to handle it, much like the fourth would have done. He chose what he thought was the best outcome with what he was given. Hiruzen says with a sigh, and for the first time that Naruto could remember, his tough but somehow still grandfatherly facade slipped, allowing his age to show through momentarily. Do you think he made the right choice, Gigi? Naruto asks while trying his best to keep the sadness out of his voice. Hiruzen pauses to really think about how he's going to answer what seems like an innocent question. Normally he would have just answered honestly, saying that he honestly didn't know if it was the correct choice. But something in the back of his head was telling him to give some details of that night. With one look over at Naruto, he makes up his mind. Naruto, I'm gonna be honest, I honestly don't know if he made the right choice some days. There's a lot about that night that is unknown to me. Things that'll probably stay as unknowns for a long time to come, if not forever. What I do know is that somehow the Kyuubi was released, it somehow appeared in the middle of the village, and the event was used by the elders to steal some of the power from the Hokage position before I could fully take over again. Hiruzen says while leaning back in his chair, watching the boy for his reaction. He watches a few emotions flow across the boy's face, but the big ones are sadness and anger. Before Hiruzen can comment, Naruto asks something else. Released? What do you mean it was released? As soon as the words hit Hiruzen, he curses lightly to himself. With a sigh, he realizes he now has to explain more than he wanted to. But there is some positive to this. He can use it to tell Naruto about his mother. With a flick of his wrist and a few quick hand seals, the ANBU leave the room and a blue light spreads across the walls, ceiling, and floor. Before I continue, Naruto, some of this information is considered an SS rank secret. The normal punishment for revealing this information would be immediate execution with no trial. However, it's another secret revolving around you that only we can talk about. If some of what I'm about to explain gets leaked, it could put you in more danger than you already are. Do you understand? Naruto has to take a deep breath to steady himself. Then he nods for the Hokage to continue. You are not the first container of the Kyuubi. In fact, you are the third container, or Jinchuriki as they are called. He raises his hand to stop Naruto from responding. The first was Mito Uzumaki, the wife of Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage, and she sealed the fox into herself after the fight between Hashirama-sama and Madara Uchiha. She held the fox well into old age and only transferred it to the second Jinchuriki when she was about to die. The second was a woman named Kushina Uzumaki. She was brought from Yuzushiogakure for the purpose of becoming the second host. I do not doubt that she would still be the host if it wasn't for that night. You see, the seal is at its weakest when they are about to give birth. Naruto's eyes go wide at what that one line could imply while Hiruzen continues to explain. From that reaction, I see you understand where this is going. Kushina was set to and did give birth to a healthy baby boy, and that boy is indeed you. This is where the unknowns of that night come into play. The fourth was there to monitor the seal so it didn't break and release the fox. I honestly have no clue what changed so suddenly to allow that to happen. It wasn't long after your birth that the fox appeared in the village, and only 20 or so minutes before Minato appeared and commenced his fight that ended in the sealing of the fox into you and his death. Every day I wish it had been me to sacrifice their life, but Minato wouldn't have allowed me to take his place because it was his duty as a Kage to lay down his life. Hiruzen finishes with a deep sigh and a long hit from his pipe that he lit at some point during the explanation. Naruto is overwhelmed with emotions due to all of the new information. He's extremely happy to at least know of part of his family, even if he'll never meet them. He's extremely sad because he'll never get to meet his mother and because she held the same burden that he currently does. But there's also some anger at whatever caused the fox's release, making it so he didn't have any real family of his own. Although he considers Hiruzen like a grandfather and Shisui has become like a brother to him, it's still not the same as a real blood family. Subconsciously his hand goes to his stomach where the seal is located. While Naruto is distracted, Hiruzen slowly puts his pipe down before launching out of his chair with an outstretched hand towards the corner. Before anyone but a Kage-level shinobi could realize it, Hiruzen had a hand wrapped tightly around the throat of a blank-masked ANBU member. What a fool Danzo is, thinking I wouldn't notice his damn puppets spying on me and Naruto, in my own office at that. He thinks before snapping the ANBU's neck with a simple flick of the wrist. Even at his age, he is more than enough to take down a small army. One lonely spy in his office was nothing. As he drops the body, it bursts into flames, very quickly erasing all evidence besides the mask. Hiruzen scoffs and walks back to his chair. He takes a seat and repacks his pipe before taking another puff. What Hiruzen missed was Naruto wasn't quite as distracted as he thought. Now Naruto is just wide-eyed at the display of raw speed and power out of someone he saw as a gentle old man, even if he is the Hokage. Although this isn't the first death he's seen, seeing it happen with such overwhelming power and speed on display is different. When he saw the civilians get killed, the power difference was expected, but seeing just how much farther ahead a Kage is compared to what he assumed was an ANBU is a display he never thought he'd see. After a few minutes, Naruto turns to Hiruzen with a single question in mind. "Gigi, why'd you kill that ANBU? I thought they were the elites of the ninjas and helped a lot." With an unnoticeable flinch because he was hoping Naruto hadn't seen that, he does come up with an answer. After pulling out a standard ANBU mask, he turns to Naruto. "While they are ANBU, they aren't mine. My ANBU wears animal masks with a colored stripe to depict rank like this mask," he says, holding up a dog mask with a blue stripe under the left eye. "The ANBU I killed was wearing a featureless mask with NE written on the forehead. They are a division of ANBU that never should have existed in my opinion and was supposed to be disbanded many years ago by the 4th. They were originally created by Lord Second to handle missions that we didn't want to be connected to the village during war times. They have never officially existed on paper besides 2 pieces of paper that only the current Hokage can access. If you ever come into contact with them, I want you to flare your chakra as high as you can to alert every ninja possible. These are not good people and they haven't been under Hokage's command ever since the 4th tried to rid of them. He warned me that they probably weren't disbanded in his final letter before death, and as you can see he was obviously correct. Do you understand?" Naruto nods. "Good. Now do you have any questions about your mother for me?" Naruto is quiet for a moment before asking 2 questions in rapid succession. "Did she love me? And did she leave anything for me?" "Of course she loved you. I've never seen anyone happier to be having a child. Even with all the added risks and worry from being a Jinchuriki, I don't think anyone could deny the love she had for you. As for if she left you anything, I'm not sure. If she did, it would be in your parents' house." He gave Naruto a look that said to stay quiet immediately after seeing the outburst that was sure to come. "I can't let you have the house until you know of your father and I have a talk with those who live by the property, or else it could cause a major outburst of why you're staying at that house. While I'm sure they probably suspect the truth if they've taken a look at you, I have to be cautious in how it's handled due to the many egos that could end up involved." As he finishes saying that, he realizes that he's given up enough information for the boy to probably suspect who his father is through one single sentence, because there's only one man that lived in this village that he resembles. However, Naruto has known he looks like the 4th. It's kind of hard to not notice at some point when there's a giant carving of his head overlooking the village. This does make one of his theories that he thought was insane sounding seem more realistic now though. When he used to wonder who his parents were, he always liked to think his father was Minato due to the resemblance, but for an orphan who's hated by the village that he was seen as a hero of, that idea seemed as if it was completely insane. He isn't going to focus on that now though, instead, he's going to focus on what he knows is a fact. Kushina Uzumaki, the second Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, is his mother, and now he knows for sure she loved him. That thought brings out one of his rare genuine smiles reserved only for Hiruzen and Shisui. Hiruzen, seeing no outburst or any other questions coming, leans back in his chair, getting back to work, while letting the boy process everything without anything else being added. After a while, the privacy seal drops, and the ANBU returns back to their normal positions. Naruto gets back to doing his calligraphy, and Hiruzen eventually runs more scenarios by him, making sure to avoid anything that could cause another long conversation. Before Naruto leaves for the night, he does get Hiruzen's opinion on his calligraphy, getting the okay to practice the first seal in the book. The rest of this week continued in much the same manner, with Naruto visiting the Hokage when he wasn't busy. Time skip. First day of school. 5 a.m. Although he didn't need to be up this early, Naruto had gotten used to waking up before most, so he could have at least a little bit of peace before training and the village woke up. Today was different though, because it was the day he started the 6-year journey to becoming a shinobi of the leaf. Slowly getting out of bed, he grabbed a change of clothes and went to take a shower. After showering, he grabbed a quick breakfast and left the orphanage, heading straight towards the Hokage monument, knowing he had some time to himself before class started. Once on the monument, he hopped over the railing and sat on one of the stone spikes of hair on the fourth's head. Looking out over the village, he couldn't help but smile a bit at how peaceful and calm the village looked in these early hours before the civilians got up to start their day. From up here he could see the whole village, the occasional ninja hopping from roof to roof, and far beyond the walls and into the expanse of forest that covers Fire Country. After an hour of sitting up on the monument and just watching the village, Naruto heard someone softly land behind him. Turning his head quickly to see who it was, a small smile spread across his face. "Good morning, sensei." "Good morning, Naruto. Are you ready for your first day at the academy, brat?" Shisui said with a grin. Naruto just rolled his eyes before replying, "Yeah, I'm ready to start, though I wish it didn't mean that I'd be getting less actual training. It's going to be so boring going through all the history and geography again after you made me read it." Shisui just chuckles and grins before getting serious. "I just wanted to remind you not to aim for the top of the class, even though you could probably get Rookie of the Year if wanted it easily. Remember, deception is a ninja's greatest tool, and I want you to use it to its fullest. I'd say aim for the lower rankings if they are still putting together genin teams like they used to. It guarantees you at least a decent team. I'm not saying you have to be dead last, but these titles don't mean anything when you are in the real world." Naruto smirks. "I know those titles don't mean anything outside of our ninja, and I didn't want the rookie title anyway. Sounds like a lot of work, and you give me enough of that as it is." "Hey, I don't give you that much work," Shisui half shouts in reply, his grin for moments before returning full force. Naruto can't help but laugh at his sensei's antics. After a moment of laughter, Shisui continued. "Look, I know you've enjoyed your training with me, but you also know you'll be getting less now that the academy is starting. I can't train you every day anymore, as I am still a skilled ninja of the leaf who needs to take missions to survive. I'll check up on you whenever I can, but I want you to train on everything I've taught you so far after class every day. Use the weekends to try and sneak into the library and find something new to read. I normally wouldn't ask someone to do such a thing, but I know they probably wouldn't just let you enter. Be good in class, brat. I expect great things from you in the future." With that said, he vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving Naruto to his peace once again. 7:10 a.m. Naruto was walking up to the academy's gates and saw a crowd of kids and parents gathered in front of the building. Not wanting to be glared at by everyone, he quietly and quickly made his way over to a tree, a bit off to the side, and sat down to wait to figure out what class he was a part of. He knew it was likely impossible to avoid being noticed, but the longer he could put it off, the better. It was after another 20 minutes that the Hokage stepped up in front of the crowd and began his speech to the newest generation. I would like to welcome everyone to the start of a new year at the Ninja Academy. This year, like every other, is the start of another generation venturing into the beginning of their ninja careers. During these next 6 years, I want every one of you to do your best and learn as much as you can. The more you learn, the better ninja you will become and the more likely you will be to succeed. I want every one of you new students to try and find within yourself the will of fire during your time here and respect your teachers. At this point, Naruto tuned the old Hokage out, knowing that once he got going, he could talk for hours about nothing. However, he couldn't stop himself from chuckling along with most of the crowd when Hiruzen said something along the lines of, "That's enough of listening to an old man ramble," before they started to call students names to split them into their respective classes. As the Hokage's speech ended, Naruto decided it was probably a good idea to stand up and listen now. He briefly met the Hokage's eyes as the man walked away and gave him a small smile. After returning the smile, Hiruzen shunned shins to his office to start on his daily task of paperwork and keeping the council in line. Naruto listened intently to the names being called until he heard his and went to stand in the row with the rest of the kids in his class. Unfortunately, upon the rest of the crowd hearing his name being called, hushed whispers of the demon brat being allowed to join the academy quickly spread. While outwardly he didn't react cause he was used to it by now from the villagers, inwardly he was annoyed, mad, and sad all at the same time. All for very valid reasons at that. In a way to distract himself, Naruto glances up and down the row of kids he joined. Surprisingly to him, he saw this group had most of, if not all of the clan heirs in it. Well, this class setup can't be too bad if I'm with all of them. They may be better than the villagers, Naruto thought while briefly making eye contact with who he assumed to be a Nara based on looks and the muttered troublesome he caught. Similar thoughts about an Akimichi, an Aburame, and an Inuzuka swirled in his mind for a few more minutes before their new teacher, Irika Umino, into the building and to the classroom they would be in for the next 6 long years. Once in the classroom, Naruto went straight for the seat in the far back of the room next to the window. It wasn't long before the 2 seats next to him were taken by the Nara and Akimichi. With the Nara in the middle, Naruto gives them both a glance before deciding to introduce himself to his seatmates. "Good morning, my name is Naruto Uzumaki," he said, a slight bit of nervousness in his tone. "Shikamaru," said the boy in a black shirt and forest green shorts, with his hair pulled back in a spiky ponytail as he put his head down on the desk and closes his eyes. "Choji Akimichi," said the plump boy in a 2-tone green shirt and forest green shorts and spirals on his cheeks while munching on chips. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you both as well," Naruto replied with a small smile and turned to look toward the front of the classroom to Irika, who was beginning to speak. "Hello class, my name is Irika Umino, and for the next 6 years, or until you drop out," he thinks knowing some just aren't cut out for ninja life before continuing. "I'll be your sensei. During these years, I'll teach you everything you need to know to be a successful ninja at the start of your career. We will cover everything from history and math to weapons and basic jutsu to chakra theory. Now I'm going to do roll call, so say here when your name is called." At this point, Naruto tuned out Irika and only paid attention to hear his name. However, one name did catch his attention, Sasuke Uchiha. After roll call, Irika handed a piece of paper to each student that contained the syllabus for these 6 years. Giving it a quick read, Naruto raised an eyebrow at how overly reliant the curriculum was on history and other non-physical aspects. Knowledge is important and all, but to him, it seems like this is a setup for civilians to pass easily and not to train competent ninjas. With a roll of his eyes, Naruto folds the paper up and stuffs it in his pocket while thinking, "I should probably bring this up to Gigi, so he knows what quality of ninja is likely going to come out of his class." "Alright everyone, that paper contains the outline of everything you will learn over the next 6 years. As you can see, these first 2 years will be mostly history and some theory to get you started. After that, we will start some physical training and go through the katas for the academy-style taijutsu in the 3rd year. The 4th year will add weekly spars and weapon practice. The last 2 years will add the 3 academy jutsu that are needed to graduate. Now before you say anything, know each year will not change what you are learning but add more to our schedule. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's more than accomplishable with the time we have. Now as today was just to get you all together and see who's in your class. We have nothing else planned and you are dismissed. As Irika finished his speech, all the kids rushed past him and out the door besides a few. Sasuke, Shikamaru, Choji, and Naruto all followed the class out at a normal pace. Once outside, Naruto sees all the parents there to pick up their kids. Not wanting to deal with the glares and comments, he just gives a small goodbye to his 2 new friends and runs off while avoiding everyone's eyes. Once out of sight of the academy, he slows his run to a walk, shoves his hands in his pockets, and starts making his way toward the Hokage Tower with his eyes down. Upon reaching the tower, he quickly goes up the stairs and down the hall on the top floor, completely ignoring the secretary, and knocks on the door at the far end. Enter comes the muffled voice of the aged leader. Naruto opens the door and walks in. His mood instantly changes from subdued to happy as a small smile graces his face. "Hi Gigi," he says while looking at the Hokage behind a desk covered in what looked like to him endless amounts of papers. Hiruzen looks up from his current document and smiles seeing who it is. "Naruto, my boy. How are you? What brings you to me today?" "Actually, I need to ask you something important." He waits for a nod to continue. "I don't think the academy is properly teaching ninjas everything they need to survive based on the curriculum." Hiruzen quirks an eyebrow at Naruto. "And what makes you think that? Do you have a copy of the current curriculum?" Hiruzen shakes his head no, and Naruto reaches into his pocket and hands Hiruzen the folded-up curriculum. It focuses more than 2/3 of our time at the academy on history only. Physical training doesn't start till year 2, and they don't teach basic skills like taijutsu and weapon skills till the last half of our time. "I see," Hiruzen says while looking over the curriculum with a slight frown. "It is indeed lacking quite a bit even for peacetimes in my opinion. However, there isn't much I'm going to be able to correct for your class unfortunately. It may take your full 6 years to even figure out why the standards have fallen so far." Naruto snorts. "I can take a guess considering it's my year from what little I know of politics from sitting in here during occasional meetings." Hiruzen just stares at him while waiting for the boy to continue making him shift in his spot from the attention. "Who are the only other people with even a slight bit of power, or as I've heard you mumble, more damn power than they should ever have gotten?" Hiruzen just blinks a few times and sighs, then curses silently. "The council, of course. It's probably them, though I know for sure it wasn't the shinobi side as your class is full of the council members' kids, which leaves the civilians and the elders. I also doubt it was the elders as they preach too much about making Konoha #1 when they think I'm not paying attention." He growls lowly, "But the civilians shouldn't have the power, but they are the only option." That last sentence spoke lowly before sighing. Naruto just nodded and sighed as well. "Yeah, that was my main target considering the hatred the civilians hold for me. I'm assuming it was done to try and stunt my growth, but at the same time it hurts the whole class and the village. You are far more observant than I gave you credit for, Naruto, and sometimes I wish you weren't. Also, what have I told you about listening in on my meetings?" Hiruzen questions with a playful glare, making Naruto rub the back of his head, sheepishly in embarrassment. "Sorry Gigi, but it's hard not to hear some things when you sit not even 10 feet away." Naruto apologizes while still looking embarrassed. Hiruzen just chuckles and shakes his head. "It's okay my boy, just don't make it a habit to eavesdrop on people. It's not a nice thing to do." Hi Gigi. "I won't do it often, but sometimes I can't help it," Naruto says with a small smile but still embarrassed. "Now, was there anything else you wanted from me?" Hiruzen asks. "Actually, why do you do all the paperwork yourself when clones exist? I mean, shadow clones even return memories, if I remember what Shisui-sensei said correctly," Naruto asks while tilting his head to the side. A purple-haired, cat-masked ANBU guard that's hidden in the office has to resist screaming kawaii and tackling the young boy in response to this action. The Hokage's face goes blank of all emotions, and he just sits there staring at Naruto for a solid 10 minutes, causing the boy to start to worry for his adoptive grandfather figure. Right before he can speak up, though, Hiruzen slams his head into the desk, causing everyone, including the hidden ANBU, to flinch at the loud bang. Naruto walks around the desk and hugs the man nicknamed the Professor for not thinking up this solution himself. Hiruzen returns the hug and wipes a small bit of blood off his forehead. Well, I'm extremely disappointed in myself for not thinking of that sooner. I'm known as the Professor for having learned every jutsu in the village and continuing to learn more. I, however, never once considered using the best infiltration jutsu for paperwork. He sighs, "Thank you, my boy, for this information. I owe you a lot for this information and for saving my old self from doing paperwork all night. This may even allow me to start digging into the council affairs to start correcting my past mistakes." He quickly makes a cross seal and 3 clones appear and with a nod split up the work before starting. Not to mention, with more help you can properly read through everything, so you don't accidentally pass anything, considering the council somehow got the Ninja Academy under their control when that should be ninja business. Naruto said. "Indeed, that is very true, my boy," Hiruzen says with a slight frown at a child knowing how to do this job better than him. "Now if you're gonna stay, please go work on something or read over on the couch. I have a lot to work on. Otherwise, shoo, I don't need any more distractions." Hiruzen chuckles out. Naruto just smiles and shakes his head before sitting on the couch and starting his sealing work, hoping he can start making real seals soon instead of just repeating the same motions until he feels like he's good enough to move on. -2 days later, Council Chambers. The Hokage was sitting at the head of the chamber with his advisors and civilian council to his left and shinobi council to his right. Currently, he was just listening to the council, mostly the civilians, bicker with each other. In his opinion, other than one topic besides what he will be bringing up soon was worth even discussing with them. Ever since being clued into using clones for work by Naruto, even if it was only 2 days ago, he's come to realize how much he has potentially missed by being overworked. In just these 2 days, there were nearly 30 attempts to take more power from him, and he was sure as hell not going to allow these mistakes to continue while he was stuck in office. Quiet spoke loudly but not a yell, instantly getting the council to settle, smiling inwardly to himself that he still had that power at least. "I have one last thing I'd like to discuss and then this meeting will be over. It was brought to my attention that our Ninja Academy standards have decreased drastically. Would anyone like to explain why and how this was possible, as I certainly did not approve of this myself?" Hiruzen looks around the chambers, making sure to make eye contact with every single member present. Everyone except Shikaku, who had his head on the table and his eyes closed. "Hokage-sama, we thought that, in these peaceful times, the curriculum was too harsh. We aren't at war any longer and don't need to be pushing these kids that hard," spoke Michiro, the head of one of the larger merchant guilds in Konoha. Getting a few nods of agreement from the civilians, he opens his mouth to continue but is silenced by a raised hand from the Hokage. "While I agree that we don't need to follow the wartime standards anymore, it has been brought to my attention that currently we are barely training ninjas, let alone competent ones that will be of benefit to the village. Care to explain why it was decided to reduce the academy to barely harder than the normal schools?" Before anyone answers, I want you to remember ninjas are trained to kill, steal, and lie so you can peacefully continue to work. "Sir, even so, this is for the best," Michiro speaks up again. "Please explain how making it so you can graduate with only book smarts is the best for our military." Hiruzen snaps back in a cold tone. Danzo could only inwardly smirk at the spine Hiruzen seemed to have grown suddenly. "Especially when we have never gone for the quantity of ninjas. We have always aimed for quality ninjas who will survive the harshness of this world, so please explain." He continued in that same tone, oblivious to Danzo's thoughts. Now sweating a bit, Michiro stutters out another response. "That's what Jonin-sensei are for, right? That explains why you did it, and since it's already too late to change the system for the current batch of hopeful genin, there's nothing we can do to save this group. You, however, avoided how you did it without my approval. After the QB attack, the council had to pick up slack B before you took over again. Education is one of the things we took over." Michiro stutters out while gaining his confidence back as he spoke. "We deemed it more reasonable for us to control after that. So again, you civilians thought it prudent to take control and get involved in ninja matters, something you have no right to do." In fact, this council has no power at all outside of war times. All you truly are is advisors on various matters. Hiruzen snaps in an icy tone while inwardly laughing his ass off and making a note to thank Naruto for giving him the push he needed to set some things straight. Truthfully, you don't even have a say in civilian matters according to the actual law of this village. You are nothing more than people to get opinions from. Do you understand me? High Muchiro chokes out with fear just wafting off of him. Good. Now 3 things are going to happen after this meeting. 1. The civilian council will be stripped of all of its power, including the power that has been granted to you legally by a Hokage, former or present, until some things have been taken care of, and even then you likely won't get most of it back, if any, depending on the results. 2nd, the elder advisors are being stripped of all power permanently, as they shouldn't have had any say in any matter to begin with. No Hokage has ever granted you power, and therefore you will only be doing as your title says, advising. And 3rd, the entire civilian council will be taking a trip to TNI to have a talk with Ibiki. Outside of the academy regulation, I have found a few other major issues that won't be mentioned until the culprit/S are dealt with. He states in the same icy tone while releasing a bit of Ki to get his point across. Now ANBU remove them. In a flash of movement, a masked ANBU operative is behind every civilian member before shining them away to TNI. After all is said and done, Shikaku finally shows some interest in the meeting. As troublesome as this is, Hokage-sama, who was it that brought the curriculum to your attention? I'm sure many of us would like to know, so we can thank them, as the latest class has every major clan's heir in it, besides the Inuzuka, with Hana still holding that title. That brought many nods of agreement from the Ninja Council and surprisingly the elders. With a smirk, Hiruzen happily answers, in fact, the one to bring this issue to me was someone in that exact class. One of the students, believe it or not. His smirk slowly becomes a fox-like grin that reminds many of them of both Kushina and Naruto when they had an idea for something, which puts many of them on edge, not knowing what to expect next. It was one Naruto Uzumaki. Silence. Complete silence was the initial response before Shikaku regained his bearings and spoke up. Troublesome. I knew that kid was more than he looked when I saw him on the first day. He sighs and puts his head back down, getting a few chuckles from Inoicho and Choza. Hiruzen stands and gives a real smile. Now that some issues are being dealt with, this meeting is dismissed. Everyone nods and slowly funnels out of the chambers and begins the trek home with some things to consider. This leaves Hiruzen and Danzo alone. So Danzo, what is it you would like to speak of? If it's to try and get him as your pawn again, it's not going to happen as long as we both live. His tone becomes icy again at the end, but the smile never leaves. Although I disagree with allowing him to be trained as any other, no, I know where his place in this village is after seeing what him bringing one issue to you has caused. I am curious though, why are the civilians being interrogated? Seems a little harsh for ruining a few years of ninja hopefuls. I also have a suggestion to figure out how long it's been going on so we can fix the education issues in already active teams if possible. Danzo says in an even tone, but for the first time in many years, he has a small smile of his own on his face at seeing the god of shinobi and Professor return, even if it doesn't last. Hiruzen gives a small chuckle before signaling ANBU to reseal the room. Once it's sealed tight again, he responds. You are correct, the education isn't why they are in this much trouble. While I won't give you everything you want, as I know you are holding back information as well, I will however humor you a bit. Naruto made a suggestion that helps out in my day-to-day business, and it allowed me to catch some attempts to pass laws that only benefit the civilians alongside some much larger issues. May I know why your stamp seems to have been used for some of these attempts? Danzo genuinely frowns at that, not knowing what is happening anymore. I'm afraid I'm not sure what you mean. I haven't used either the Shimura clan stamp or my advisor stamp since I was running Black Ops, and even then I had a copy of your stamp for anything of true importance, and that was well over 20 years ago. Which stamp was used? Your advisor stamp. Luckily, it seems nothing of major concern was passed through with it, or you would very well be with them speaking to Ibiki. I have already nullified everything with an advisor stamp that didn't provide more benefit to the village than an individual or group. No, the big issue with this is that I was so swamped with paperwork after the QB attack that I physically couldn't read everything, or I'd have never left the office to even hold one of these meetings. Many things likely slipped through the cracks, and it's about time to correct my mistakes from then. In fact, I would greatly appreciate it if you could flip through the list of laws and decrees passed since the attack and point out the major ones that need to go immediately, while I continue to look into a few things that could cause even larger issues for Konoha in the future if not handled delicately. Of course, old friend. I'll get on that when I get back home. Hiruzen nods and snaps his fingers, causing an ANBU to appear. He whispers a few things to him before the umbu is gone as Danzo continues. Now, as for helping with the education issue, I suggest running a small skills test for any team that has remained genin over the last 5 years. As few as there are, any who haven't made an advancement either do not have the mentality to advance yet, which can only be gained through experience unfortunately, or have failed to put in the work to increase their skills sufficiently, that is if they weren't already behind the curve, that is, and having to play catch-up. Hiruzen hums before nodding again. Well, we only have 6 genin teams remaining from these last 5 years. I will set up something with our current ANBU commander and have him plan it. He would know best where teams should be to handle missions outside the walls. The few boxes of decrees and laws passed will be in your entryway before you get home. I hope you don't find anything too bad in there. I already feel bad enough knowing I let anything slip by in the first place. Danzo takes that as his dismissal and makes his way out to do as he was asked. Hiruzen is left to think for a few moments before vanishing from the chambers himself to get back to work. 2 months. 2 long months of listening to the same history lessons that he had already read once, because Shisui had to be extra sure he couldn't be sabotaged in his education. Don't get him wrong though. Naruto is grateful for everything Shisui has done for him to this point, but he's starting to give in to boredom. It doesn't help that Irika can't give an engaging lecture to save his life. The man was just boring when he got going. It wouldn't be so bad if the topics were interesting, but again he's been through them once, so he has lost all interest in hearing someone repeat the books almost word for word. I mean, come on, he could at least spice up the lectures a bit to make them interesting. However, how boring the lectures are is the least of the issues that have sprouted up in these 2 months. The biggest issue was that the orphanage finally kicked him out. If it wasn't for the fact that Naruto sorta expected something like this to happen after the matron was replaced, he would have been really upset about it. She used the line, "If you are old enough to train to be a ninja, you're old enough to take care of yourself away from the actual children." Naruto snorted when she said that and just went to get the few school books he kept in his room before hopping out the window and heading to see the Hokage to report what happened. Naruto has never, and hopes to never again, seen the kind old man that mad again. It proved to him that the title of God of Shinobi was very much deserved to be bestowed on Hiruzen. Flashback. After arriving at the tower, Naruto walks around the back of the building before walking up it and knocking on the Hokage's window. He smiled a bit seeing Hiruzen jump slightly. When the window was opened, he walked in and stood before Hiruzen with as serious a face as his young self could muster. "What can I do for you, my boy, and why didn't you use the door?" the aged Hokage asks with some curiosity while noting the serious look. The same serious look is threatening an ANBU member to lose their composure due to how out of place and adorable it looks. Taking a deep breath, Naruto responds, "Hokage-sama, I would like to request an apartment to live in away from the orphanage." Hiruzen frowns and looks Naruto in the eyes. "And why should I allow a new academy student, who has never had to take care of themselves or live alone, to take up all that responsibility suddenly?" Taking another deep breath for what he was about to say, Naruto steeled his resolve. "Well, it's either this. You allow me to take up my parents' residence, which is still too dangerous, or I'm stuck on the streets. The new matron has kicked me out." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees rapidly the moment those words hit Hiruzen. The change in the room was enough to set the ANBU on edge and make Naruto shiver slightly. New matron? That orphanage has had and should still have the same one that took over after an incident some years ago. "One I personally put in charge." Hiruzen speaks out calmly, but on the inside, he's seething. See, this wasn't just any orphanage. No, this was one of the few that encouraged its residents to take up a ninja lifestyle instead of a civilian one. Because of this orphanage's staff are usually retired ninjas, so they can impart wisdom and watch over the children to hopefully spot any that would do especially well in the ninja field. MGG. She was suddenly replaced by someone younger a few months before the academy started. "Disturb the matron for me, would you please?" Naruto Hiruzen says in a kind tone, but everyone in the room can tell that this is about as close to an order without saying it that he's willing to use on a child. Okay, well, she has short brown hair and green eyes, moves like an active shinobi, and barely seems to show emotion unless it's directed at me. As Naruto said that, a pressure came over the room, causing him to drop to a knee and gasp for breath before passing out for a few seconds. Flashback end. The other issue, and the one that Naruto is currently thinking about, is that Shisui had informed him that he would be around even less than originally planned. Due to clan duties, he will be unable to train him for any extended period of time indefinitely. What this means for Naruto is he'll essentially be back to being on his own again. That was a week ago. Now we find Naruto on top of the fourth's head, lost in thought about what exactly Shisui had told him. Flashback. Naruto was exiting the academy, about to run off to train like normal until he spotted a crow sitting on top of through the gate. He watched the crow fly off toward the training ground he had been allowed to use. He ran off after it, excited to see his sensei and hoping it would lead to learning something new. Upon reaching the training ground, he channeled the small bit of chakra needed to get through the security seals and spotted his sensei sitting under a tree. Naruto walked over to him and took a seat himself about 5 feet in front of Shisui. "Hello, sensei. What's the plan for today?" Naruto chirped happily. Shisui looked up from his notepad with a small smile to the little boy, no developing young ninja, that has been under his care for a few years now. "Hey brat," he responded, earning a playful glare from said young ninja. "I actually have something I need to tell you." Hearing that nearly put Naruto on guard, and would have put him on guard if it was anyone else but Shisui or the Hokage that said it. "And what would that be, sensei?" Naruto asked. Something in the back of his mind, that he knew wasn't the Kyuubi, told him he wouldn't enjoy the answer. "Well," Shisui started slowly before deciding to just rip the band-aid off and say it, "I'll be unable to train you myself for the foreseeable future. Something is happening with the clan and I won't have the time to be here in person for some time. I can't give you any details, but if all goes well, we can resume full-time training soon. This doesn't mean I'll let you start slacking off though. In the next few days, I'll have one of my summons drop off a storage scroll in your apartment, so watch out for that. It will have a schedule for the next year of training outside of the academy and the equipment I've been keeping for you. For now, continue on the already set routine and I can oversee you today." Flashback end. Now, Shisui never said what was happening was bad, but Naruto got the vibe that whatever was happening wasn't good either. That's what has kept his mind busy this last week, attempting to find a reason for the sudden change in the already fewer training sessions together. It definitely doesn't help that the Uchiha as a whole seems to have become more reserved over the last few months. That wouldn't have meant anything to Naruto, if he noticed it at all, had Shisui not said it was something with the clan that was taking him away. Too bad he probably wouldn't figure it out without breaking into the compound and spying on the Uchiha, and Naruto wasn't too keen on doing that, so he'd have to wait till he was either told or something happened. The summon crow had also shown up yesterday with a storage scroll just like Shisui said it would. Not that Naruto doubted him on that. The new training schedule was alright and actually had a few new things for him to learn. The first new thing he decided to learn was water walking because he knew chakra control would always be one of his major issues. He also could see the benefits of being able to cross rivers and ponds without having to get wet in the process. It was incredibly hard for him to pull off. Far harder than tree walking had been. It was similar to tree walking where you had to channel chakra to your feet, but instead of a set amount of chakra to stick, water walking took a constant flow of chakra that changed depending on the water depth and conditions to stay afloat. Because of the changing flow, he knew it was going to take a while before he could perform it to his sensei's standard, which was a 1-hour run on top water, and then being able to run through his taijutsu and kenjutsu katas 3 times each without slipping. Man, did he wish he could just do the standard of the village for mastering the exercise, but he wasn't willing to let Shisui down. He was also hoping he might be able to use the normal clone jutsu with this added control, so he didn't have to show he knew shadow clones until after graduating. The scroll also contained the jutsu scrolls for both Henge and Kawarimi, the other two jutsu that are needed to graduate from the academy. He decided he wouldn't learn either until he mastered water walking, even if his former lack of control could have learned both successfully. Better to have the control and not need to apply it than to not and realize you still need more before you can progress. The last item for his new training schedule that the scroll held was a handwritten Kenjutsu scroll for Shisui's personal style that he uses in conjunction with the Shunshin. This style is what he used to cement his name in the shinobi world as Shunsin no Shisui. The style on its own is pretty effective, being based around quick strikes to vital areas and muscles, but when combined with Shisui's improved Shunsin, it can rival most other styles. The last things in the storage scroll were his kunai, shuriken, tanto, a cookbook, and a note for him to read. The note explained that now that he could safely store his own gear, it was up to him to keep it safe, and that the cookbook was an apartment-warming gift, so that way he didn't have to rely on the few places he could eat out at. However, he will still have to rely on eating out until he gets the henge down because no grocery store will sell to him at normal prices, making it far cheaper to not stock up himself. That's how the rest of this year went for Naruto. He trains alone, goes to class, and gets the occasional visit from a crow summons. All in all, if asked how he's done this year, it's been a good time. In his training, Naruto has managed to master water walking and continues to have 5 clones a day to practice both water and tree walking. He has gotten to a point in his weapon throwing that he's started to use clones as moving targets to improve. He has also managed to get Kage Bunshin down to not needing any hand seals anymore but at a higher chakra cost, as well as both Henge and Kawarimi with half as many seals at the normal chakra cost. The last big thing that he's done is finally allow himself to start making basic storage and explosive seals after deeming his handwriting to be good enough, as the book did say perfect handwriting is needed after all. Speaking of seals, after proving that he could draw a working storage seal in under 30 seconds, he had the Hokage place one on the inside of each wrist to store his kunai, shuriken, and anything else he deemed necessary to have immediate access to. He also got basic exploding seals down to under 30 seconds and continues to try and shorten that time as much as possible. The next seals for him to learn were the higher-powered explosive seal and the basic weight seal, though weight seals may take him a while due to the danger involved in them if not done right. He has also gotten comfortable with his tanto in hand and can confidently run through the katas. He can't do them at high speeds yet, like the scroll says is needed, but is slowly getting there. He also hasn't had a chance to use it in a spar yet because Shisui hasn't been able to show up in person. However, he has used it against shadow clones but feels like that can only push you so far without someone to correct or modify the style to fit you better. Shisui's occasional note tried to reassure Naruto that everything would be fine and he'd be back to training with him soon. Those notes would have helped if the tension surrounding the clan compound wasn't so thick a blind man could see it. Naruto knows things are just getting worse with whatever Shisui was called back to take care of, but he won't let it get to him since Shisui hasn't said so himself. The academy was going all right. He decided he was going to aim for the bottom of the class to be underestimated as much as possible when out in the real world. Not dead last, but bottom 5 students grades-wise should do well enough. He'll let himself excel in the minimal physical courses they will eventually get, but that won't raise his grade any. He has also made a few more friends with more of the clan kids. One of them was Shino Aburame, who he started talking to after he found some of his Kakachu bugs on his arm, taking a little bit of his chakra. He found Shino to be quite intelligent but very quiet. Someone who rarely speaks, but when he does it's something to listen to. They bonded over the fact they are both outcasts to the general village. Aburame tends to be avoided by most people who haven't worked with them before due to them hosting a hive of insects inside of their own bodies. So much like himself, Shino has a hard time making friends due to most other kids being scared of the bugs or thinking he is weird due to his quiet nature. Another was Hinata Hyuga, who he started talking to after noticing she didn't seem to have any friends in the class. He found her to be very kind but lacking confidence in herself. Naruto was really trying to help her with the confidence issues because it could cause many issues for a shinobi. However, it was slow going. Whenever they talked she stuttered a lot and couldn't look him in the eyes. She also had this bad habit of downplaying her own skills to the extent of actually causing her to do worse. While not weak by any means, her lack of confidence in herself is causing her to limit what she is capable of. While the kindness her holding back shows, it is a detriment to herself and others as it gives others a false sense of confidence in their skills, thinking they can beat a Hyuga easily. The last, and most surprising, was actually their sensei Irika Umino. At the start of the year, Irika was like almost everyone else who hated Naruto. Just another blind fool who let their hatred cloud their better judgment. But over the year he changed. He slowly warmed up to Naruto after careful observation and came to the conclusion fairly recently that there was no way this boy could be the demon fox. Naruto is still wary of him due to his experiences but is still willing to give him a chance. He just hopes it isn't a ploy to hurt him. They've never talked outside of class, but Irika has stopped targeting Naruto in class, trying to make him look bad. Overall, he'd call this a good year. While Naruto wishes he could see Shisui, he's trying not to be a child and get upset over what Shisui has to do. He wishes he had someone to train with, but without knowing many and being hated by most, it's unlikely he'll find another person to train him without reservations and correctly that isn't a classmate, and even then he'd rather not in case their parents don't like him. He did make some friends and made good progress in training, so it can't be called a bad year. Definitely better than every year prior. Only if he knew that this would be the best year of his life for a few to come. It was currently the second week of class for year 2, and we find Naruto listening to Irika give another boring lecture. This one was about the Hokages and the legacy they left in the village. He was listening just enough to absorb the words but not enough to process the information at this moment. Ever since Irika stopped calling him out in class as often, Naruto has allowed his mind to wander more as long as he's read up on that day's topics already. He just can't wait to get into whatever theory that will be covered. Irika pauses in his lecture and glances around the class to see if anyone is paying attention. Seeing a few, he decides to throw a few questions out to get everyone back on topic. Who can tell me the specialty of the second Hokage? Irika asks and glances around again. Seeing 2 hands up out of everyone, he sighs. Since no one seems to be paying attention, he'll pick who answers at random. Reading the attendance list quickly, Irika smirks at his choice. Naruto, can you answer the question? Naruto stands with a yawn. Hi, sensei. Lord Second, Tobarama Senju, specialized in water ninjutsu and jutsu creation, having created many of the techniques that are used commonly by the Leaf and surrounding minor villages. He answers and sits back down. Very good, Naruto, thank you. Irika says with a smile. Kiba, can you tell me what the third Hokage is best known for? Kiba jumps to his feet and loudly answers. The third is best known for his mastery over all 5 elements, before dropping back into his seat with a confident smirk. Good, but not entirely. While it's true it is widely known he has mastery over the 5 elements, he's best known for his excellent battle strategies that helped win us the Third Great Shinobi War, and was the beginning of his nickname, the Professor. Irika states calmly while hiding his annoyance as he just covered that topic in the last 15 minutes. Kiba grumbles about being wrong, getting a few snickers from the class. Now, Sakura, can you tell me what made the first Hokage famous? Sakura stands and states very matter-of-factly, the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, gained fame for his use of Mokuton ninjutsu. His wood style is unique to him alone, even though it's classified as a bloodline but has yet to reappear in any of his descendants. He is also famous for founding our village. Then sits immediately after finishing. Very good, thank you, Sakura. Now on to the fourth Hokage. Irika says before getting right back into his lecture, happy that more people are paying attention. Lord Fourth, also known as Minato Namikaze, was the youngest named Hokage in the Leaf's history. At this point, Naruto goes back to zoning out after confirming Irika is just repeating the textbook again. Before he knew it, the bell releasing them for lunch rang. Everyone but Naruto, Shikamaru, and Choji ran out of class. Naruto because he didn't feel like being a part of the stampede, Shikamaru because he was asleep, and Choji because he was waking Shikamaru up. They walked out together once the rush was over and went to a quiet and shady spot under the lone tree on the academy grounds. Lunch and the rest of that day passed by quickly after that. Late that same night, Naruto was peacefully sleeping after wearing himself out training like most days. That was until a tapping noise broke through his dreams. Opening his eyes slowly and growling to himself, he looks over to his window where the sound is coming from only to see a crow staring at him. Naruto gets up and opens his window to let the crow in. The crow flies into the room and drops a note before landing on the window ledge. It sits there just watching Naruto in wait. He tosses the crow some fish before picking up the note and reading it. "Hey brat, follow the crow and meet me immediately, we need to talk," is sloppily written on it. With a frown, Naruto hastily dresses and grabs his gear just in case before following the crow out the window. The crow leads him through the forest and toward a cliff outside the Uchiha district. Once reaching the edge of the treeline, the crow disappears in a puff of smoke with a caw. Cautiously walking out of the treeline, Naruto spots Shisui standing at the edge of the cliff with his eyes closed. He looks like he just barely got out of a battle for his life. "Shisui, what happened to you and why did you call me out so late?" Shisui smiles and without answering, throws a handful of kunai straight at Naruto, forcing him to draw his tanto and deflect them. "What the hell, Shisui?" Naruto yells. Shisui just chuckles before finally responding, "Sorry Naruto, I had to make sure you were progressing nicely. A lot is happening that I don't have time to explain, but just know that the future is gonna very interesting. I had you meet me so I could see you one last time and give you a warning." He opens his eyes only for Naruto to notice he's missing one. "That doesn't explain why you look like you've been in a fight to the death, and where is your other eye?" Naruto asks with a worried tone. "Well, you see, I kind of was in a fight to the death, and as for the eye, well, that's why I wanted to see you," Shisui says while rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly. "My eyes are special and hold a great power that could have ended what is going on with the clan. However, one man stood in the way of it and stole one eye before I could get away. Because of this, the clan is screwed. In 1 week's time, the Uchiha will be no more at the hands of Itachi." Shisui sighs before walking a few steps and kneeling in front of Naruto. "Look, kid, I have a task for you for the good of the village." While saying this, he pulled out a vial full of a green liquid. "After Itachi is done, go to my house. Under the tatami mat in my room, I left the final things I can give you there along with an explanation of everything," said while plucking out his remaining Sharingan and dropping it in the vial before screwing the top on. Naruto through all of this is speechless and felt like he was lost. He wanted to stop Shisui from pulling out his eye, but something in the back of his mind told him to let it happen. He comes back to his senses, feeling the vial get pushed into his hand. "Keep that eye safe, Naruto. This is the task I'm trusting you with. Cannot fall into anyone else's hands no matter what. Be wary of a man named Danzo. He must never get a hold of the power my eye holds." Shisui stands back up and takes a few steps back to the edge of the cliff. He knows that what comes next is gonna hurt Naruto the most, and there's no way for the kid to try and stop it. He may have grown, but he doesn't have the control to stop a subtle genjutsu from holding him in place, so he wouldn't try and stop Shisui from doing what he needed to do. "I love you, Otudo. Be strong for me." Shisui takes a step back and off the cliff, plummeting to the waters below. Naruto, seeing Shisui step back, flared his chakra as high as he could and channeled it all to his legs, overloading the genjutsu, and leaping forward in an attempt to stop him from falling. His fingers brush Shisui's shirt, but ultimately, he fails to stop his fall. "Nii-san no," Naruto says quietly as tears begin to flow from his eyes. "I love you too." Standing and taking slow steps back, he feels the vial hit his foot. Bending down to pick it up, he stares at the eye floating inside. With slow and shaky movements, he seals the vial into his left wrist. Afterwards, he sprints off into the woods with tears running down his face. What he wouldn't realize until he fell asleep is that he tapped into the Kyuubi's power for the first time. Because upon falling asleep, he would be pulled into the seal for the first time to meet the beast that has influenced his life from the start. Some hours even later inside the seal, Naruto awoke with a start and couldn't recognize his surroundings. Furthermore, he was lying in what looked to be an inch of water. He stood up quickly and noticed he didn't seem to actually be wet even though he was just laying in the water. Confused, nervous, and lost, he did the only thing he could and started walking down the tunnel he seemed to be in. After walking for what felt like hours, Naruto comes upon a large open room split in half by large columns. With a look around, he sees the walls are cracked. There's 2 pipes that travel from this room into the tunnel, and on the centermost column is a piece of paper with the kanji for seal on it. The seal tag is all it takes to realize where he must be, but it doesn't do anything to calm his nerves. With slow and steady steps and growing fear, Naruto walks toward the columns. He pauses a few feet away and peers into the darkness on the other side. For a moment he thinks he was wrong in his assumptions to where he is as all is silent. Then there's movement in the shadows and a low growl emanates from the dark. "You are here early, brat. Why are you here?" A deep and menacing voice growls out from the darkness. I don't know why I'm here, QB or H how I got here," Naruto stutters out before his curiosity kicks in. "What do you mean I'm early?" Emerging from the darkness comes the QB no Kitsune, who casually lays down in front of the columns, now much more obviously the gate of the seal. Its large head rests on its paws and stares directly at Naruto. "Well, brat, we weren't supposed to meet for a few more years yet. As to how this is likely the cause of you somehow drawing out a minute portion of my power while trying to save that Uchiha you called a brother," Kyuubi said with a growl when mentioning Shisui. "So what happens now that I'm here? What was supposed to happen after we met was that your senses were supposed to slowly improve over a few years, as well as gaining my natural sensing ability that I'll have to teach you to cope with." The Kyuubi snorts before continuing, "And you'd also finally get a chance to unlock your mother's infernal chakra chains. The seal used to hold me blocked your Kekkei Genkai off till after we met. I doubt that blonde brat you call Yandame knew about that." With a frown, Naruto asks, "What do you mean you'll have to teach me to cope?" "Well, Kit, I don't sense chakra like other sensory abilities. I sense negative emotions. I feel others' hatred, anger, greed, lust, fear. This is the same ability I shared with my first host Mito Uzumaki after she sealed me into herself during the fight between that tree-hugger husband of hers and that psychopath Madara." Even without the ability to sense emotions, Naruto can feel the absolute hatred rolling off the Kyuubi at mentioning Madara. It's clear to him that the man can never be redeemed in the fox's eyes. "Unlike you though, Mito was lucky. She was the beloved wife of the Shodame and no one knew about me being in her. While in the village, there used to be an ever-present peaceful lack of many negative emotions. All I felt since being sealed in you is hatred, anger, and fear all around you. You better hope these changes indeed stay slow or else you won't be able to stay in the main village without being consumed by it. This ability is both a blessing and a curse, Kit. People's intentions toward you and others will become clear, but you'll also have to deal with not just seeing the hate, but feeling it along with many more dark emotions constantly until you can suppress it. I think I see how that could be bad. I'm sorry you have to deal with that," Naruto says while looking down with a frown on his face. The Kyuubi's eyes widen slightly in surprise and he thinks, "I knew the kid was going to have promise as a ninja, but maybe just maybe he'll be the one." Naruto doesn't see this, however, and just keeps speaking, even without being able to feel it. "It's hard to walk through Konoha sometimes with the glares and comments. The people hate me because I have you with me even when I did nothing but be born on the night you attacked. It's already so much some days that I want to disappear." "I know, Kit, I know. At least you won't have to develop this ability alone or in war times. I'll help where I can, or it would look bad on both of us if your sensory ability caused you to go insane, and I won't have a crazy container even if it would make escape more likely. But for now, it's time for you to go and wake up. Oh, and don't go telling the old monkey about anything that happened tonight. Information is power, and you now know more than you should about the Uchiha situation. Revealing that too soon could get you killed." "I understand, Kyuubi. Thank you," Naruto says before fading from his mindscape, leaving the fox alone. "Make me and your parents proud, Kit. I know you have it in you to achieve anything you want," Kyuubi says after Naruto is gone before closing his eyes. "Make me and your parents proud, Kit." I know you have it in you to achieve anything you want, Kyubi says after Naruto is gone before closing his eyes. The fox did have one more thought before drifting off to sleep. Wonder if the brat even realizes he activated a Sharingan of his own and a Manjikyu at that. Probably not, though he's not ready to use it yet anyway. Damned Uchihas and their immense love and hate. The Yondaime was a genius for sure, but he truly didn't understand the full scope of the seal he used. Naruto wakes up as the sun streams through the tree leaves. He blinks a few times trying to remember where he is and why he isn't in his bed before the memories of last night flood into his head. Suddenly he's not blinking because of the sun but to clear his vision of the fresh tears that are threatening to fall. Standing up, he quickly takes off running back toward the village while wiping his eyes so no one sees him cry. Upon entering the main village again, he sticks to alleys and backstreets to avoid as many people as possible. Even without being seen, Naruto catches flashes of emotions for those whom he passes close to. Trying his best to ignore it for now, he continues on to the academy where he's meant to be in an hour. Once at the academy, he quickly makes his way to his class so he can meditate and sort through everything that happened and what he needs to do next. That day in class was by far the hardest he's had to deal with. Between trying to not break down due to last night's events and the flashes of hatred and disdain, he could feel from many of those around him. He wished he'd skipped at least one day. Time skip, 4 years to graduation day. We find our favorite blonde atop the Hokage mountain as the sun starts to rise. He hasn't changed much over the last few years but now wears black cargo pants, a black shirt with skin-tight mesh underneath, and a pair of standard umbu-style boots. He also has a tanto strapped to his lower back. It has a black sheath with a crow's head on it with the Uchiha symbol carved into it, just below the crow's head. The handle is wrapped in black cloth with red stitching along it. Anyone who has worked with Shisui would recognize it as the tanto that he carried outside the village. In these last years, Naruto has thrown himself into hard training to be as strong as he can be before becoming a ninja. It all truly picked up when he went and retrieved what Shisui left him the day after the Uchiha massacre. Flashback, day of the massacre. Naruto was sitting in a tree, overlooking the Uchiha compound while writing in a book when he felt a presence appear beside him on the same branch. All he feels from them is a mixture of emotions. You know, Naruto, you shouldn't be here today. It's rather unsafe, the person says. Naruto looks over before responding, I know, Itachi, but I wanted to see you before it happened. His voice is void of emotion. This causes Itachi to pause and really look at the boy. He looks tired and like he's cried recently. Itachi sits and sighs. What's on your mind, kid? Shisui told me what you are going to do. Itachi frowns. How much do you know? Nothing besides that you're going to end the clan and that there's a situation. Shisui told me he left a note explaining everything and some final gifts for me to retrieve after all was said and done. But I have a request I'd like to make. Itachi's frown deepens. Damn, cousin. He says lowly, what is it you wish to request? With a deep breath, Naruto responds, if it's possible, could you spare your mother and brother? Shisui told me of your mother's relationship with my Kachan and how good of a person she is. And while I don't particularly like Sasuke, I don't wish his death over whatever the clan has going on. Itachi sighs, listen, Naruto. I can't make promises, but I'll see what I can do because we could have been family if the council wasn't so involved in your life. Sasuke was supposed to be the only remaining member left anyway, and I can see him having a mother doing a lot of good. This makes Naruto smile a bit. That's all I ask. Just try to spare her. He stands and jumps away, leaving Itachi to think about how to pull this off. The next day, Naruto could be found in another tree on the other side of the Uchiha compound. Now as he looks over it, there's an eerie feeling in the air. Standing at the edge of the branch he's on, Naruto takes a deep breath and leaps over the wall, landing softly with a roll. He chose that tree specifically because it's directly outside of Shisui's backyard. Upon entering the house, he quickly makes his way to the master bedroom to collect what he was told to. Under the tatami mat is a small crawl space. Right at the opening is 2 scrolls and a tanto he has seen only a handful of times. Sealing everything away, Naruto quickly makes his way out of the house and back over the wall before running to his apartment. It wasn't until a few weeks after the massacre that Naruto learned Itachi followed through and left Mikoto alive but stuck in the hospital. In a coma at that. It took nearly a year for her to wake up, and even then she was so weak she had to stay bedridden in the hospital for another 6 months before there was any major improvement. Flashback end. The first scroll explained that the Uchiha were planning a coup and were planning on using him as a weapon to pull it off. It also explained that Shisui had a terrible feeling in the days leading up to his death and prepared some things so Naruto could keep training if everything went too awry. Lastly, it explained that his eyes were the final gift that he was going to receive if he ever died on a mission or attempting to stop the clan. There was a storage seal on the bottom of that scroll that included a scroll on the hummingbird style of taijutsu, the Shunshin, Shisui's advanced version of the Shunshin called the Shuinpa, and the full style of Kenjutsu that Shisui used and had begun teaching him. Also included in that storage seal was the summoning contract for the Crow clan for him to hold onto and pass onto a worthy Uchiha or to use himself as the Crows already approved him having it. It ended by saying not to open the second scroll unless he had to ever use Shisui's eyes for whatever reason. Naruto could only guess that the second scroll held secrets related to the Sharingan and the abilities granted by it. It was that same day that Naruto stepped up his training. During this time he has eliminated the use of hand seals and higher chakra cost for the Henge, Kawarimi, and Kage Bunshin. He learned the standard Shunshin and mastered it to a single one-handed ram seal at the standard chakra cost. He still needed the seals for Shisui's Shuinpa, and he is nowhere near as fast at it yet either. He has also not added any other jutsu to his arsenal besides what was left by Shisui. His taijutsu and kenjutsu have gotten to a high genin level after sparring with clones daily. He's even started mixing both styles together as they both rely on high-speed movement and precise strikes. However, there is only so far sparring with clones of yourself can get you. Taijutsu-wise, Naruto has taken to the hummingbird style like it was made for him, but that may be a byproduct of Shisui trying to train him for high-speed movement anyway. Or maybe it was the fact it was made by his father that resonated with him so well when learning it. His chakra control has gotten to mid-chunin level thanks to abusing shadow clones while he focuses on physical training. Every day he sends out 15 clones to work on it. 5 doing leaf balancing, 5 doing tree walking, and 5 doing water walking. This made him realize that he would always have to be training in chakra control if he wished to hold it at any decent level, with his chakra pool constantly growing at the rate that it is thanks to the seal holding the Kyuubi, feeding small portions of its yokai into NIS network daily to allow better control and less damaging effects to his own body from it. In Fuinjutsu, he has gotten to level 5 and has started using weight seals to train with. The weight seal is only set at 30 pounds currently, as he didn't want to hurt himself or stunt his growth. The use of weight seals caused the biggest improvement in his training. It lets Naruto shed most of his baby fat and start developing a toned physique. They are also the reason his speed has gotten to mid-chunin levels without the seals activated and high genin/low chunin with them activated. Along with the weight seal, he has added a few basic chakra barriers and alarm seals to his repertoire. Nothing worth using for any real defense, but it's a good introduction to the field of security seals. There is also quite a few trap, sensor, and chakra restriction seals that he has learned over the last few books for sealing, but nothing really special. He does wish that there were a few better barriers though, but outside of the simple 3 and 4-point barrier with a variation or two, it was only theory on them. A good portion of the first year was spent working with the Kyuubi on his unique sensory capabilities. Much to the surprise of both of them, it wasn't just negative emotions he could sense. It was all emotions. Negative emotions were just the most common and most overwhelming to feel. The working theory they had as to why both Mito and Kyuubi never noticed was that when not at war, Mito rarely left the Senju compound and suppressed the Kyuubi as much as possible, while the Kyuubi was always met with fear and hate when humans found him before he was sealed. This would evidently lead to neither of them noticing the positive emotions. With this information, they trained until Naruto could feel the whole village and could separate individuals within 100 feet of himself. After that, he trained to completely ignore the feelings of others when he didn't want to actively sense them. While not able to fully ignore it, for the most part, it doesn't bother him anymore. The last bit of training he took up didn't start until 2 years ago when he finally discovered he had a Sharingan of his own, and what a surprise that was. While not having anyone to train him in it, Shisui making him study the individual clans of Konoha did give him enough information to work on the basics. He'd use it in spars against his clones that both were and weren't using, as well as fight clones using it without doing so himself. Better to understand it both as a tool for him to use and as a weapon being used against him than to assume just cause he had it that he was immune from it being used on him, even with so few Uchiha remaining. He didn't want to reveal he possessed the dojutsu until he figured out why he had it in the first place. The Kyuubi either didn't know or didn't want to inform him of what part of his family it came from. When asked so, he was in the dark until he could go to his parents' house. He could ask Makoto if she had any idea, but that could backfire on him if Sasuke overheard with the way he has been acting since the massacre. That's all he did over these 4 years. He spent all his time training to the point he hadn't even gone and seen Hiruzen or held a full conversation with anyone he had become friends with. Or at least not outside of when he's been called to the Hokage's office because Hiruzen was worried or outside of class. Not like he interacted much outside of class anyhow. Did he regret spending all of his time doing nothing but training? No, his goals were too high to not put everything into training while he could afford to give this much time to a single thing. This was his mindset because after today, pass or fail the academy test, he would be a ninja and wouldn't be able to dedicate everything to training once mission started. Well, let's get this over with, Naruto thought before holding a single-handed ram sign and disappearing from the Hokage monument in a swirl of leaves. It took a few more shunshins to get across most of the village and to appear just outside of the academy. Without a single word to anyone and ignoring the glares from the parents, he heads inside and up to his class. While he wasn't the first to arrive, it wouldn't be for another 20 minutes before class would start. He was one of the first to actually go up to his class. In the meantime, he rests his head on his chosen desk and meditates while attempting to distinguish the emotions around him. What was felt the most was nervousness and some excitement, although there were 2 people with a distinct lack of care for the day. One was Sasuke. All he felt was pure hatred and anger. That's all he has felt like since 4 years ago. It disappointed and confused him how someone could feel nothing but those 2 emotions at all times. The feelings don't even dissipate when his mother comes to pick him up or drop him off at the academy. Naruto can only begin to guess that it has something to do with Itachi, but without confirmation or more details of that night, there's nothing he can do. The other was Shikamaru, the lazy genius of the class. He always had this feeling of boredom to him, but at least he felt other emotions. Mostly what Naruto could only call curiosity, and it seemed to have almost always involved him somehow. Why the Nara was so curious he didn't know and didn't bother to ask, figuring if it was important, he would approached by now to sate the curiosity. What Naruto wasn't aware of was that his curiosity started as wondering why everyone seemed to avoid and hate him, and that became a puzzle with missing pieces when Naruto changed after the massacre. And Shikamaru hates and loves a puzzle, and this one infuriates him that he can't figure more of it out. Other than them, almost everyone else feels the same on this particular day, nervous or excited. At least that was all the students. Irika felt proud as usual, and Mizuki was once again throwing hatred his way. No surprises there. The parents who are now beginning to leave all shared in the feeling of pride the Irika had. It wasn't even 5 minutes later that Irika walked into the classroom and began their final day. With a wide smile, Irika waited a minute for the room to quiet down, and to his surprise, they actually did for once without him having to yell. Quickly clearing his throat, he began his speech. Welcome to the last day of the academy, everyone. After today, hopefully, most of you will have become ninjas and can take the next steps to becoming who you want to be. Of course, before that can happen, you still have to pass your finals. Yes, that means 1 more test, or more specifically tests to take. The first of which is a written exam. This gets groans out of a majority of the ninja hopefuls. I know, I used to be the same way when I was at the academy, although it was different back then. Now this exam will cover everything you learned during your stay here over these 6 years. You'll have until lunch to complete it. After lunch, it's taijutsu and then ninjutsu. The rules for each will be explained when it's time for that test to begin. For now, Mizuki will pass out the tests, and once everyone has won, it will be time to begin. Again, more groans sound out around the room at the thought of another written exam, getting a small chuckle from Irika, while he hands a stack of papers to Mizuki before sitting at his desk. Irika takes this moment to look around the room and make a quick mental list of who is expected to pass. Of course, all the clan children are on that list, but so are a few civilian kids like Sakura Haruno. Though he doubts any of the civilians who do pass today will pass the real test and become ninjas, it's just not probable with the current curriculum, something he's glad this is the last year of. He does linger on a few students as he glances around. Sasuke Uchiha being one, a child just can't quite shake this uneasy feeling he gets when interacting with. Another is Naruto Uzumaki, someone he wished he could help out more but didn't out of fear for his tenant, though he has seen moments of him being far superior to what is shown in class. And it's just as unnerving as his tenant in Irika's eyes, who can't understand why someone would hold back so much without being a Nara who is known to not put in the effort. Naruto looks down at his test and has to try and keep a neutral look. It's 1 page, 50 questions, and not a single one makes sense to him. It's not that it's hard, just that he can't see how most of this will ever be useful outside of a classroom. Like question 5, what is the monument that showcases the Hokage? While it's obviously the great stone faces of the Hokage monument, how will that ever help him in the real world? With a slight shake of his head, he got to work filling out the questions regardless. About 20 minutes into it, he was interrupted by a deep voice in his head. What kind of garbage is this? How would knowing that Tobirama and Hashirama had 3 other siblings who all perished during the warring clans era ever help you? With an internal chuckle, Naruto quips back before refocusing. Not a clue, Q. Not a clue. No wonder there's been so few civilian-born ninjas to actually make it past Genin though. QB just growls at the thought of anyone surviving if this is the standard in the current world. It takes all of another 10 minutes to finish filling out the test and for Naruto to cross his arms and lay his head back down on them. This time he does take a small nap. Naruto snaps back up to a seated position at the sound of the lunch bell going off. With a quick sigh, he collects his test and joins the line to hand them in. Once the test is in Irika's hands, he's out the door and going up the staircase to the roof to enjoy some quiet time away from the other children. That doesn't last long, however, as he sees Shikamaru up there as well with an oddly serious face. Hey Shika, what's up? You don't normally come up here or leave Choji out of whatever you're doing? Naruto asks while focusing on his senses to gauge the situation at hand. Shikamaru still feels bored, but now there's a very obvious curiosity boiling just beneath the surface that sets him slightly on edge. I'm well, Naruto, but I've got some questions I'd like you to answer. Things I can't seem to figure out on my own and no one else seems willing to share. He says with a sigh before sitting on the sole bench up here. Finally looking to solve whatever puzzle you think I am. Well, shoot, and I'll answer what I can. Naruto answers now, even more on edge, hoping it doesn't bring up the Kyuubi or Shisui. There just are some things he isn't ready to say, but will anyway if it means having someone like Shika helping him in the future. Shika's eyes narrow. I am, but how would you know that? I've seen the glances and the curiosity since I sat with you and Choji on the first day. You didn't hide it all that much, he says with a false smirk. Shikamaru humps and looks up at the sky fair. Now do you know why everyone avoids you? Internally, Naruto curses his friend and the Kyuubi laughs. Well, you gonna tell him, brat, or should I? He gives an external sigh and looks at Shika seriously for a few moments, considering if this is a good idea or not before responding and ignoring Kyuubi completely. Yes, I know the reason behind it. I know the reason behind the stares and hatred. Are you gonna tell me the reason? Shikamaru asks, his curiosity building. Yeah, sure, I guess, but it comes with a history lesson. October 10th, 12 years ago, the Kyuubi attacked the village. We were taught that the Yondaime killed the beast and lost his life in the process. We weren't, however, told how it happened. Just that it did. Well, the thing is, you can't kill a Biju and it would upset the power balance of the elemental nations if you did. This is cause the only way to rid of one is to seal it away into something or someone. A person with one sealed into them is called a Jinchuriki. Every village has 1 or 2. They are used as war deterrents and tend to be universally hated. Naruto stops there to give Shika some time to process that they were taught the false history of the village and to see if he has it figured out yet. Shikamaru sits there thinking for a few moments before his jaw drops. Holy shit, Naruto. It's sealed in you, isn't it? Yes, he is Shika. I contain the QB. Naruto has to carefully keep his face clear of the fear of what could come next. And before anything else, if you speak of that to anyone, it's as heavy a crime as treason as does revealing any S-rank secret, and will get you executed as put into law by the Sandaime for my apparent protection. If it's meant to be a secret, why does it seem like everyone knows? Well, Jounin and Anbu know for security. The council knows as well for probably a similar reason. The adults of the village know because it leaked to the populace. Then parents told their kids to hate me, and the rest is history. Naruto says, taking a seat on the ground and not looking at Shikamaru. Again, holy shit, Naruto. Why did you never tell me? Because I'm terrified of how people will respond when they know Shika. This is why I have so few friends to begin with, he says quietly. You know what? No more questions for today. I don't think I could handle another perspective warping answer. That's all you may find from me, unfortunately. I'm a walking S-rank secret after all. After that, they fell into a relatively comfortable silence for the rest of the lunch period. After lunch, the class gathered at the taijutsu rings. All right, class, as I said this morning, the second portion of your test will be taijutsu. The rules will be simple. You will face off against a chunin, and your goal is to either last 5 minutes against them or to land a solid hit. We don't expect you to win these spars against chunin, so they will be restricted to Haigenin level skills. These spars are anything goes, which means you can use weapons if you so desire, but no lethal strikes. They are still a comrade in arms, and a good ninja should know when and when not to aim to injure or kill. Now, with that out the way, we can begin. After his speech, Irika began pairing off students 3 at a time with the available instructors, including himself, Mizuki, and another chunin named Amaya. Naruto took this chance to watch the matches to see who actually took this seriously and who didn't. He isn't the least bit surprised by any of the results, though. It more confirmed that the academy is failing more than anything. Almost all the civilian kids barely made it to the 5-minute mark and couldn't land a hit. Sakura did slightly better, but it's clear she didn't take any of the training seriously, just that she did it at least. There was one civilian girl who was well above the rest, though, and an orphan named Ruina. She lasted the 5 minutes, barely breaking a sweat and putting her all into trying to land a hit. Of the clan kids, Shikamaru did the worst by quitting at exactly 5 minutes and never going for a strike. After him was Ino, who did the same as Sakura and lasted the 5 but clearly didn't bother training hard. She would have placed last if Shikamaru cared enough to show his skill. Next was Choji, who easily lasted the time limit but refused to throw a punch or kick. He is just too kind for this work. Shino also went the full 5, but he at least attempted to strike back, but the Aburames aren't known for taijutsu. Hinata went for 4 minutes before disabling her opponent with the Juken that the Hyuga are known for, though she was definitely holding back. Again, just too kind for this line of work. Kiba took 3 minutes before he was able to land a heavy punch to the instructor's side that dropped him to a knee. Sasuke went for 1.5 minutes before landing a snap kick to his instructor's stomach, knocking the wind out of them. Naruto, you're up against Mizuki, Irika called out after recovering from said snap kick. Naruto stands with a sigh and mutters, in the words of the Nara, troublesome, getting a snort from Shikamaru, who was lying beside him watching the clouds. Simultaneously throughout the village, the entirety of the Nara clan sneezed and muttered troublesome. Those with spouses were quickly smacked over the head with whatever object was closest to them. Stepping into the ring, Naruto takes a deep breath and focuses all of his senses on Mizuki alone before holding up the seal of reconciliation. After Mizuki begrudgingly returns the sign, Naruto takes a step back and drops into the opening stance of the academy style, with Mizuki doing the same. Hajime, Irika calls out for the fight to start. Mizuki immediately shoots forward at low chunin speeds with one thought in mind: it's finally my chance to put the demon in his place. Naruto narrows his eyes and sidesteps the rush before throwing a low punch that Mizuki dodges by hopping back. So that's how he wants to play, it seems, he thinks while eyeing Mizuki. End this quick brat and put him in his place, the Kyuubi grunts out, knowing damn well Naruto can handle this easily. For once I don't mind showing off a bit, Q, he responds before shooting forward, matching Mizuki's speed, and launching a spinning back kick at Mizuki's chest that is blocked by crossed arms. He presses the slight advantage by stepping into Mizuki's guard and aiming an elbow at Mizuki that is narrowly dodged. Naruto steps in again even closer and hooks an arm around Mizuki's leg before twisting, taking them both to the ground. There a poof of smoke and a kunai appears in Naruto's hand that he places on the back of Mizuki's neck. Concede, Naruto says calmly, with an edge to his voice. I forfeit, Mizuki growls out. The fight lasted a whole 45 seconds. With another poof of smoke, the kunai is gone again and Naruto stands back, making the sign of friendship that once again is begrudgingly mimicked by Mizuki. After that, Naruto walks off back toward Shikamaru to watch the last few fights. If he was paying more attention, he might have seen Sasuke seething over being shown up. When he gets there, Shikamaru is staring at him as if he just did the impossible. What's something on my face? He asks with a smirk. Troublesome blonde, Shikamaru mutters. If I didn't know better, I'd say that was closer to an actual fight than a spar. No, it was a spar, we both can do better than that. He held back, but it was definitely at a higher level than Genin. I held back as well. I can move faster than that, and I never drew my tanto. Naruto answers with a sigh. You know, that was one of the other questions I wanted to ask at lunch. Does that sheath have the Uchiha crest and a crow on it? Shika asks almost too calmly for what that could imply. Naruto tenses and shifts the tanto so the crow and crest are hidden. It does indeed contain both those symbols. I was taught by the former owner and it was gifted to me, he says in a forced calm tone. I see, and may I know the name of who trained you? Shika asks again almost too calmly. Shisui Uchiha started training me 2 years before I joined the academy. Why? Before Shikamaru can answer, Iruka calls the class back inside the classroom. Naruto quickly walks away, leaving Shika to do what he does best, use his genius and start figuring things out. Once back inside, Naruto chooses a seat away from Shikamaru to avoid any more questions. While he would have answered them, Shisui is still a touchy subject for him. He ended up sitting next to Hinata and Shino. He gave them both a nod before sitting and closing his eyes. Due to that, he missed Hinata's blush and Shino's raised eyebrow. It wasn't long until Iruka started his next speech. Alright, good job everyone. You all are only one step away from becoming ninjas now. Now, I will be calling everyone one by one into the room next door for the ninjutsu portion of the exam. You will have to show me and Mizuki the Academy 3. Henge, Kawarimi, and Bunshin. If you pass, you will be given a headband and be told when to meet for team placement. Any questions? No, good. He calls the first name and walks out with them following. Naruto sighs and leans back in his seat. Anu, eni Naruto. Is everything okay? Hinata asks, stuttering far less than when they first met. Naruto opens his eyes and looks over to her before answering. Yeah, Hinata, everything's good. However, I know I'm gonna fail this if you can't substitute the Bunshin with a differing type of clone. It doesn't matter though. Before Hinata can respond, Shino does. Why would you need to substitute the Bunshin? Logically, it makes no sense, and it is the easiest of the jutsu we were taught here. That may be true, Shino, but if you would check my chakra levels with a bug quickly, you may understand. Shino nods and does just that. When the bug returns to him, both of his eyebrows shoot up into his hood, causing Naruto to chuckle. As you were just informed, I have near Kage-level chakra reserves, which makes gaining the control needed to use such a minuscule amount needed for any illusion nearly impossible unless I drain my chakra to nearly empty before trying it. It's just not probable I'll ever be able to use the basic Bunshin or Genjutsu for that matter. Naruto explains. Shouldn't you be worried you won't ever pass the AC Academy then, Naruto? Hinata asks. Normally no, I shouldn't actually. There should have been chakra level testing to find special cases every year. However, with the academy being so lackluster in preparing us for real life, it doesn't surprise me that it never happened. The Hokage is aware of this and my circumstances. As long as I prove I'm capable everywhere else and show him I can at least make some kind of clone, I will have passed as well. Our generation got screwed by the council with the academy standards. This information causes both Hinata and Shino to be slightly surprised, as they had no idea that was even supposed to be a thing. After explaining, Naruto just closes his eyes again and relaxes until his name is called. An hour later, Naruto is finally told to head to the next room to test. Upon entering, he stands in front of his teachers waiting for instruction. "All right, Naruto, first up the henge," Irika says. In a poof of smoke, Naruto turns into the fourth Hokage. Giving a spin as instructed by Irika, Naruto lets his senses expand over the area. Irika is nervous and Mizuki is seething in anger. "Perfect, Naruto, thank you." The henge nods and dispels in a puff of smoke. "Silas is impressive, I see you've been working hard." "Indeed, I have been, sensei." "All right, next Kawarimi," Irika says, throwing a blunted kunai at Naruto. There's a puff of smoke and the kunai flies past and bounces off the door as a piece of chalk falls to the ground where Naruto was standing moments before. Again impressive, Silas, and with such a small object, Irika says while Naruto walks back in front of them. "And lastly, please make at least 3 working bunshins, Naruto." "Sensei, is it possible to use a different clone instead of that illusionary clone? It's nearly useless in the field against anyone mid-genin and above," Naruto asks calmly.